With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
To Suzuka, ready for round 4 of the GT3 Sprint Series later on, but first the PRL GT3 Fixed Series coming to you live here on RaceSpotTV. We're 3 rounds down, and after great events in the USA to begin with at Long Beach and Daytona, last week's carnage at Jerez, it's time for another pretty twisty, technical and difficult circuit here for the 4th round of our championship. Good afternoon and evening, and wherever you're watching in the world. I'm Ewan O'Leary alongside Dareth Thacker again on Tuesday nights here on the PRL, and Hugo Louise behind the cameras. As always, it's slightly dark out there on the circuit. Start time set to be just past 6 p.m. in sim here tonight, so the sun will be going down as we're racing on, as I say, Dareth, another technical circuit, which there are a lot of, I've got to say, on this calendar.
Yeah, it's technical, but we've been here a few times with the GT3's 12th time that we're running this circuit tonight. But I mean, even next week at Zandvoort Road Atlanta, these are tight technical circuits. Donington Park, there's not really much room for error either. So it is a really intriguing calendar and really forces the drivers to be very careful about how they make their moves, which is, of course, going to be a challenge for some of these drivers. But Suzuka, you can make moves turn 1. You think down at the Cassio Triangle at the final chicane, it's definitely opportunity filled. The problem is you're going to have to take those opportunities, otherwise you could find yourself stuck in a few positions where it's not going to work out for you too well.
Well, let's see how it goes in these next few weeks, because those circuits particularly difficult overtaking chances, that is for sure. So far, though, we've had some fantastic racing, and we've got a close championship as well, which is great news at this stage of the season. Ricardo Delgado is still leading, despite the fact he finished off the podium for the first time this season last week. He's 13 points ahead of Sully Sad, who's just ahead of Matt Sheriff and Andrew Trickett, who are tied in 3rd place. Then it is Brett Furman, who's 5th. Head of Jay Steffi, a few points ahead of David Bush III and Dale Pedersen, who are tied in 7th and 8th. Then Felix Feliz and Jason Park rounding out the top 10, and Park is quite a way down as far as the points goes, already 58 adrift. Conor McKenzie is leading in the AM standings, and by the way, he's 6th overall. That's how good of a season he's having so far. 21 points ahead of Pete Measure, with Aaron Sunday just behind. Buck Hamilton and Regan Chandler round out the top 5, with Ryan Chandler just 1 point behind the other Chandler. Nick Bruno is 7th ahead of Joel Pagero, then Dave Jensen and Thomas Rep rounding out the top 10 in the AM standings. Then in the teams, it's even closer here. SGE Esports leading ahead of Lunatic Racing, with Riot Motorsports only 9 points back, even though they're 3rd. Then RCRT Orange in 4th place ahead of Sim Racing PR, who really have a few points to make up there in 5th place. They're ahead of V3 Motorsports, then B&O Cartomania, with Tachyon Simsport, Hyperion Racing and Parabola Cobalt rounding out the teams. That's the top 10 of the 21 teams entered this season. Before we go any further though, thank the sponsors, of course, as always, who make these broadcasts possible. Here on RaceSpotTV, starting with Logitech G. Wheels and pedals are designed with true force feedback to help you feel the road and own the race. Use code PRECISION at checkout on logitechg.com for 5 to 10% off your purchase. Advanced Sim Racing, owned and operated by passionate sim racers. Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminium profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount on ASR products if you use the code PRECISION5 for 5% discount on all products. Racebox Sim Racing. Racebox offers mid and high-end boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer up to the most particular sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, our button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit raceboxsimracing.com and get a 5% discount using the PRECISION5 coupon code. The Bookkeeper products add incredible immersion and realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Moradness is a performance lifestyle brand motivated by motorsport and founded by professional race car driver Daniel Morad. For more information, visit moradness.com. Miss Head iRacing Photography. Capture your finest, proudest or simply worst moments from your hobby in up to 8K resolution. A great addition to any sim room. And finally, Advanced Motorsports. Get ready to learn to be fast with Advanced Motorsports. Follow them on their socials to become a better driver. And there is the aerial shot of Suzuka in the darkness. We were told, actually, in the driver's briefing that the session is a little bit earlier than it is in the officials this week, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to see anything, and that makes commentating quite difficult. So we've moved the time forward a little bit, but as you can see, Darragh, you definitely still call this a night race. This is but this is pretty dark, to be honest.
Yeah, there may be a little bit of light in the sky, but it's not really going to help you out when there's still that much artificial light that is needed to light the circuit. You can see there the light being, or the track being lit somewhat by the pink light down towards turn 1 and out towards the Pacific Ocean, but it's not really enough, you'd have to say. Ricardo Delgado is trying to navigate his way through A, the traffic, and B, with the lack of light, to try and get himself to the top of the timesheets. But to only have 38 thousandths of a second splitting the top two in what is a nearly 2-minute lap really does go to show how technical, but how close this circuit and the race is going to be tonight.
Somebody's saying that they're rooting for Buck Hamilton because it's the name of Al Bundy's dog. Do you know what the hell that means?
No. Not a clue.
I don't know either. Hopefully I've not just read out something cancelable. That's entirely possible, but never mind.
It's a fictional character and the protagonist of the American television series Married with Children.
You can tell we're not American. I'm not enjoying American sitcoms because they're painfully unfunny. That's sorry about that. I've probably lost our entire audience. Never mind. I also apologies because Buck Hamilton doesn't seem to be in the session at the moment, which is not particularly ideal either. He's going to be taking this as his drop round, I suppose, although he wasn't here last week either. So that's not entirely great news for the AM driver there. But never mind. We'll get over that. A good evening as well, of course, to everyone else who's watching along here tonight. We're on board with Ricardo Delgado in second place. Best time 59.1 at the moment, just 38 thousandths of a second behind Jason Park. We're not quite squeezed into the 158s. I'm not sure we're going to, because this has been the pole time for a while now for Jason Park, but Delgado is improving here, and I feel like I've said it every round this season so far, but qualifying rather important again around this circuit.
Yeah, of course. I mean, some of these drivers, particularly in the AM class, will know that this is a fantastic opportunity for them to get themselves a little bit higher up the order. Of course, points are not separated between the pros and the AMs. If you finish P12 overall as an AM driver, you'll pick up the points for P12. So this is a really good chance to get yourself a little bit disconnected from the rest of the field and be able to put yourself into a position to score some good points in relation to the rest of your class. And for the time being, Colin McKenzie popping it up into P10 doing exactly that. In the pro class, of course, getting a good lap time in is going to be important to do early on in the session, but the laps will surely improve. We'll see if Jay Steffi can just about improve on his lap time. I don't think he will, and no, will stay where he is in P7, so I think a lap time about a second slower than his personal best, but definitely within range to try and go once again to set a more competitive lap time. That got close between himself and number 24. Isn't really what you want to be seeing in qualifying, really.
That did indeed get very close. I'm not sure why the interior of his car looked blue either. I have no idea what was going on there, but it looked like it was being illuminated by some sort of LED that you'd see in a computer or something. But never mind. He's going to be backing off on this lap, you would imagine. Not many drivers out there improving at the moment, but Felix Feliz is one of them, down in 12th place at the moment, behind Colin McKenzie, actually, who's now on the top of the AM standings. And what else do we expect from Colin McKenzie? Such a consistent season so far for him, consistently better off than most of the rest of the field, 21 points ahead after just 3 rounds of this championship as well. He makes his way around Spoon Curve now, getting past a bit more traffic, and now firing his way down towards 130R, which I'd imagine is a bit uncomfortable in a Porsche with its loose rear end and on cold tyres as well. The drivers were warned about the cars all getting loose, so I can imagine the Porsche is a bit difficult to contend with at this circuit.
Yeah, it's interesting to really see how the car choices by drivers will fluctuate in terms of how it will benefit them throughout the season. Of course, Porsche's maybe not being as dominant here as they could be in other circuits that we go to. However, it's almost the old faithful for all of these drivers, and we do see so many Porsches on the circuit pretty much every single week. A few more Acuras coming into the fray now, with drivers maybe getting a little bit more comfortable with that car. Of course, slightly newer. A newer choice for the drivers to have. Of course, some Chevys as well, Corvettes I should say, Chevy Corvettes, and some McLarens of course, but you do feel like the Porsche has always been that reliable, stable car that drivers have gone back to time and time again, because it's almost the known force and the known quantity of this series.
It certainly is. Good evening, by the way, to Tyler Graff, who's unfortunately ruled out of racing tonight with a back problem. Hopefully that gets better soon for you, Tyler, and we can see you back out onto the circuit again on a Tuesday night rather soon. Yeah, all these things have to be accounted for when you're sim racing. I know it's not like driving a real car, but certainly got to get these things sorted out before you sit in a sim rig, even for one of these races, that much is for sure. Dale Pedersen, meanwhile, makes his way to 130R and indeed the final chicane as well. He seems to be improving right now from 5th place. He's done a 59.3 so far. Is this good enough to improve further? He's carrying on with the lap, so it must be worth doing. He goes over the line and it's about where he was before. In fact, it's a tiny bit slower. He will continue on again, by the looks of things, go past the pit lane, but from when we've joined this qualifying session, to be honest, I'm not sure we've seen any improvements in the top 10 or so. This has been remarkable, really. Everyone's reached their limit very quickly in this session, by the looks of it.
Yeah, we've not really seen too many jumps up and down the field. I think Jason Park was slightly quicker on one lap, but either way, the 55 still staying really where he is. No one jumping up the order. We've seen quite volatile qualifying sessions so far this season. Not the same here tonight. Maybe that's a bit of the dark coming into the frame. Maybe that's just a case of how the track will fare this evening in the 35-minute race for the Fixed Series and the 40-minute race for the Sprint Series. We'll have to wait and see. But for the time being, at least, Jason Park being at the front, I don't think will bother the likes of Ricardo Delgado, because not really in championship contention is Park, and so it won't be taking too many points off of Delgado, who's currently in the championship lead, of course.
Yeah, the problem for Park is that he's had 2 fairly poor rounds to start off his season. I do think he's got good speed, actually, and he could be a threat in individual races for sure, but unfortunately finished 23rd in Daytona and down in 38th, multiple laps down at Long Beach, so he's already, can't even take a drop round to sort of hide one of those. It's going to take a lot of points gaining to get over Ricardo Delgado here, who goes over the line here and does a 59.2. That's another very solid lap time. That will be good enough for second place again. If he was setting his first lap time of the session, he would have gone second there. So he's clearly got this speed down on a consistent basis, but not quite the speed to overhaul Jason Park on this occasion, who looks like he's going to be the 4th different pole winner of this season by the looks of things, if he can just hang on to go alongside Ricardo Delgado, this man Brett Thurman, who's taken pole position, and also Jared Keane as well, who's taken a pole position so far this season. Looks like we're going to get a fourth in 4 different rounds here. I can't see even Thurman improving here.
No, we'll see if he can, but it's not looking particularly likely. He comes out of the hairpin and will make his way through towards Spoon Curve, just kind of pinning that throttle short and off the corner. You can really gain an underrated amount of time by keeping it tight to the lines around parts of the circuit, like here into Spoon Curve. Even if you can gain 500ths just by keeping that tighter line, it really does make a difference, particularly in a qualifying session that is as close as this. Run it out of Spoon, run it out a little bit wide if you carry all that momentum through, and then you have to think about 130R, not the easiest of corners, and if we start to go 2-3 wide down this back straight, it's going to feel all the more difficult, I think, in the race.
Yeah, we'll see. And get to the racing in a few moments' time, of course. 35 minutes we'll put on the clock, and we'll be set to go. Should be 6:10 in sim when we start. Should be pretty dark for this time of year. We're racing on the 25th of January here. The first race we're doing in January, the only one we're doing in January, by the way, in terms of time of date for the Fixed Series. There goes Furman over the line and doesn't indeed improve. It's been so difficult ever since those first 10 minutes or so passed by to improve at all. And that is, oh dear, shown by Nick Bruno, that was a very weird crash. I don't even know where that was because it's so dark, but that was Nick Bruno off the road. He's going to be starting from 17th by the looks of things there. And there you can see it. Just a haze of orange light in the distance, but not much. This is dark conditions. Just about see the big, whatever the big wheel is called.
Ferris wheel.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, one of those in the. It's a good job you're here. In the distance, over the hill there, but not much else, to be honest. I couldn't tell you what part of the circuit we're looking at here. Well, I could now. So there you go. But yeah, it's not very well lit, this circuit. That's the point. When you get round the back end of the circuit and get off the front straight, it gets very difficult to see where you're going, indeed. But we'll see just how dark it is when this race starts, and more importantly ends, because it will be coming up to 7 o'clock in January. I suspect it will be pretty dark in Suzuka by that stage, so that's going to be something to watch out for later on in this race, and one of the only races, as I mentioned earlier, where we'll be having dark conditions at all. We'll be starting at 6:30 next week at Zandvoort, but the date in sim will be the 1st of April. That should keep us into at least lighter conditions, if not fully bright. And we've got the same time of day and date, by the way, for the Sprint Series, which is to come a little bit later on as well, by the way. So the two series matching in that respect. Let's go on board with Jason Park here and have a lap on board here from Suzuka and see just how planted the Acura is around here, Darragh. I can imagine this car actually is quite nice to drive, especially around this first sector.
Yeah, nice that we get a bit of illumination for the circuit that he is driving through. The lights doing a decent enough job through the opening couple of corners, keeping it nice and tight to the inside curbs, making sure it doesn't drift out too far wide. Easy to drift out on turn 2. Then you're into the S's pretty quickly. Keep it nice and tight to the apexes. Just try and carry all the speed and all the momentum up the hill. You can really lose so much time just by missing the first couple of apexes and having to correct accordingly. Through Dunlop at the left-hander, trying to keep it pinned. Don't go too far wide. Again, easy to get a wheel onto the grass, and the rest of the car being dragged out wide, and that's your lap pretty much over. To the two Degners. The first, just a little bit of a flick. The second Degner, more braking is required, more precision is required as well, and difficult to get it under the bridge before coming up towards the hairpin. Such a technical circuit, so many difficult elements to the circuit, and with Jason Park having the amount of traffic that he's had on this lap, impressive to see him go to the pole.
Absolutely. There's a lot of distractions here. Nobody getting actually in his way, but as you say, distractions for sure. He does what you were talking about earlier, just keeping to the right-hand side, sort of, on the way towards Spoon, because it does really shorten your distance, as you were saying. Then through this fast left-hander, double left-hander, if you like, but you've got to make it one corner. Watch how he doesn't sort of take a couple of bites at the steering lock there. He just sort of feeds it through in one smooth curve, and then another cutting off of the distance here as we slightly bend to the left over the alternative stop, finish straight where the alternative pit lane is, and then in towards 130R, which is pretty much flat out in a GT3 these days. A phenomenal corner though of commitment then in towards the final chicane, and he was very, very pleased indeed that those cars were a few metres ahead of where he was, because otherwise they would have right been in his way through that chicane where he needs a decent exit, but not great, because it's a short run to the line if you're only finishing a lap this time round, and Jason Park there sets a 59.0, notwithstanding the blinking that was going on throughout that lap, which is sometimes a barrier to your lap counting, but there you go, it did count for Jason Park on that occasion, and he has got pole. Let's have a look at the rest of the starting grid as we're just going through warm-up at the moment. We'll have a look at where everybody is going to start this fourth round of the PRL GT3 Fixed Series from. It will be Jason Park on the front, as I say. Pedro Delgado, wow, that's not what I meant. Ricardo Delgado is in second place. He's the championship leader and starting on the front row again. Then it is Brett Furman who's third alongside David Bush. That's 4 different manufacturers inside the top 4, by the way. Sully Sad, second in the championship, starts from 5th, ahead of Dale Pedersen, who's the second of the Acuras. Then the second of the Porsches, Felix Feliz in 7th, ahead of Jay Steffi, Jared Keenan, Andrew Trickett, share row 5 ahead of Porsche to Colin McKenzie, who's alongside fellow Acura Andrew Venaro. Then it is Sean Murphy and Luke Davis, who are second and third in the AMS, ahead of Ian Southern, who's 15th overall and 4th in the AMS, ahead of Pete Maggio, who's second in the AMS Championship. Matt Scherf and Nick Bruno round out the first 9 rows, and these guys now just over a second off of the pole. Ryan Chandler 19th, ahead of Thomas Rep, who is hopefully not going to crash and quit. He's 20th, ahead of Herbert Pineda and Joel Peguero on row 11. Ross Latino and Waldo Walden are on row 12, both in the new Ferrari, of course. Regan Chandler and Jared Deploy are next, ahead of Christopher Ryans and David Morse. Dave Peterson and Robert Jeffries are on row 15. That's the first 30 in the field. Neil Alexander for Parabolic Cobalt is 31st, ahead of Louis Ortiz. Then it's Kevin Bergquist and Aaron Sunday sharing row 17 with Ian Cabana and Evander Jonesfield on row 18. Jay Jensen and Jakob Finkner are next, ahead of Drew Duessy and Sean Mulholland, the first of those who didn't set a time in that qualifying session, but will start from 40th place, ahead of Mark Sigalo. Then Sam Smeltzer in 42nd, and I believe that is it as far as the field goes. 42 in the field. Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's more than we had at Jerez, and everybody who was there last week is going to have some very bad memories about how lap 1 went.
Yeah, it wasn't the cleanest of starts. Let's just put it that way. If you didn't see it last week, you could probably go back and have a look at that after we've done here this evening. It was quite the race start, but I think drivers are going to be a little bit more aware here at Suzuka. That doesn't necessarily count for much, but you'd think up the S's in towards Dunlop, drivers will be thinking more about the prospect of cars being in their way and possibly getting caught up in what could be some starting incidents, but with 42 cars, if there's an incident inside the top 10, you're just going to get a bit of a pile on from everybody in behind, so definitely something to look out for. There is the tower what would be giving the positions in the race, but realistically I don't know where that is. You'd have to get out some night vision goggles, and I already look silly enough, so I'm not going to. The track suddenly gets illuminated with the cars on the circuit.
It wasn't displaying much information there, I've got to say, when it was up on the screen. But there you go. The headlights are going to be a big help to us, I think, tonight as the racing gets underway in the dark. A good evening, by the way, to Thomas Rep, who says he's racing against 2 clocks tonight, the race time and his child potentially waking back up to be fed again. Once again, congratulations to Thomas Rep, who unfortunately had to miss last week for the birth of his child. But good to see he's back on the grid almost as soon as humanly possible here on a Tuesday night. And hopefully he does get to the end of the 35 minutes as well. There are the conditions. 10 past 6, as I said, 67 Fahrenheit, 66 on the or in the air. It is about, what's that, mid-20s or so in Celsius, low 20s, somewhere around there. And so it's pretty cool. No one's going to be worried about these tyres overheating, which can be a worry around here, but since we're early on in the year and this race in sim is very early on in the year and we're at night, there shouldn't be any concerns about tyres overheating. These tyres will breeze through 35 minutes and they'll breeze through 40 minutes later on as well.
Yeah, should be a good length of race, not too long, but just long enough to keep drivers aware that they have to be careful about moves that they are making. And so looking forward to seeing how this one's going to develop. Of course, off the start line, I think we're going to be seeing a couple of the drivers, the likes of Ricardo Delgado, Brett Thurman, David Bush III, try and manage the start phase. Jason Park, not necessarily with the championship thoughts in the back of his mind, so likely to try and get off the start like an absolute shot. Ricardo Delgado, Brett Thurman have to keep him in touch, but at the same time don't want to be forcing the issue too much and making mistakes with that, because they're in fantastic positions for the time being. And with overtaking likely to be slightly difficult around this circuit over the course of a 35-minute race, they don't want to be giving away track position, which could be crucial in tonight's race.
Well, after last week's calamity on the opening lap, the drivers were given a bit of a talking to be honest with you, afterwards in the drivers' briefing earlier on today. If we see similar things here this evening, they really will be getting the treatment. So let's see how it goes. 42 of them this time round, an even bigger field to get through arguably an even narrower circuit here at Suzuka, especially on the opening lap, and it's in the dark as well. Difficult conditions for these PRL GT3 Fixed drivers, ready at the start of round number 4, and they're already crowding up out of the final corner and ready to go. As out goes Jason Park, he hits the gas fairly early and goes in towards turn 1. He'll have a decent lead over the rest of the field as they weave around, try and find some tire temperature just a little bit here. Delgado gets ahead of Furman, who slots into 3rd place immediately. Then David Bush III, who gets into 4th in the Audi, headed then by Sully Sad, then Dale Pedersen, the top 6 or so, getting single file through the opening few corners. But we saw this last week as well. It was in the midfield or towards the sort of middle third of the field where things started to go wrong a little bit 1 week ago. But it looks like for the leaders at least, it's been a clean start and a good one for the pole sitter Jason Park.
Yeah, looks like he's got away very nicely indeed, building up a little bit of a margin as they make their way through Dunlop towards the 2 Degners, and that'll be enough, I think, for him to feel a little bit comfortable throughout the rest of this opening lap. It's not going to be the most comfortable for Ricardo Delgado, though. Brett Thurman keeping him more than honest as they work their way through the Degners. Under the bridge they go, underneath the other part of the circuit, and they are line of stern. Not as chaotic as maybe it could have been, which is always good to see, meaning that we're going to have more drivers featuring throughout the race. Into the hairpin, though, gets really tight through here. Moves, I'm sure, will be attempted, sent to the inside, I'm sure, but there's not too much going on down here, and it seems pretty civil for the time being.
That's exactly what the stewards would have been hoping for, and that's exactly what they've got through the opening lap of this race. 42 practice, but only 40 have started. Ian Cabana and Kevin Berkvis, though, because they qualified outside the top 30, decided to start from pit lane and avoid what could have been chaos. But actually, unfortunately for them in some ways, nobody's gone off apart from now. Jared Deploy has gone off right towards the back of the field. He was in the last third of the field, and I believe he's gone off through Spoon. We'll get a check on that a little bit later on. But down into the final chicane for the first time, Jason Park's got a good lead. He's got over a second ahead of Delgado, who was a bit slow out the final chicane there. And here comes Brett Furman, looking to use that Porsche traction maybe on the way out of the corner and down the straight as well. He's got David Buster third right behind him as well, by the way, in 4th place in the Audi. He's not going to be close enough for a move into turn 1 though, and they get really single file really early here at the end of lap 1.
Yeah, almost surprising to see how quickly it's single file, because we generally see lots of moves happening in the opening lap or so, but it seems very, very well mannered off of the start. Drivers almost doing everything they can to avoid a repeat of what happened last week at Jerez, meaning that we don't quite have the teens amount of cars into the pit lane at the end of lap 1. Pretty much everybody has made it through the opening lap. In fact, everybody, all 40 drivers are involved. Jared Deploy, I mean, somehow that's not become more of an incident. I feel like last week that would have become far more than just a bit of a spin.
Yeah, it does feel like that a little bit. I'm not sure who that was, and I'm not going to lay the blame at anybody who it might have been, but it wasn't, so I'll leave that for the moment. Meanwhile, Davis still could have been dived there by Pete Meadows. He just went a little bit wide through Degner 1. He was side by side with Sean Murphy there in 13th place, but nothing came of it. And Davis didn't lose any further positions on that one, which he'll be pleased about. Then Pete Measure, then Matt Sheriff, who we go on board with here for Hyperion Racing. He's a pro stuck in a sea of AMs at the moment, right in the midfield.
Yeah, and he's just going to have to try and pick his way through. Unlike other series, of course, where the pros and AMs point systems are different, he would only gain points if he overtook Andrew Vanara, who's a few positions ahead. But with the point system that we have here in the PRL, every position counts, and so Matt will know that he has to get through on Pete Measure. Luke Davis, Sean Murphy almost has to pretend they're not there. Of course, the AM drivers fighting over their own points, but for Matt, he's got some bigger fish to fry in the pro category with a lot of drivers in front of him. 11 pro drivers in front of him. He wouldn't mind getting a little further forward to reduce some of the damage that he will face somewhat in this Pro Championship this evening. He's going along relatively nicely in the championship. It's mad as we see Herbert Pineda maybe going for an aggressive move down into Spoon, and that's not going to, well, Pineda having the aggressive move done on him, I should say, and it's not going to come off for either of them, it seems.
Again, yeah, that looked like a McLaren or a Ferrari, didn't it? But there's a lot of them round in that part, and here they go. Some of the McLarens, it's Sheriff versus Measure in towards turn 1, and that's Matt Sheriff going up into 15th place. As you say, that does gain him a point, even though in other series it might not because they're in different classes. It certainly does gain you a point in the PRL GT3 Fixed Series, as it does in the Sprint Series, by the way. It's the same rules for both races tonight. But that's Sheriff up in front of Pete Measure, who's now back to where he started this race in Southern. Is in the next McLaren, just in behind them in 17th. There's Thomas Rep, who's up 2 in the Ford. Nick Bruno in 19th. Then Ryan Chandler, who rounds out the top 20, is further up ahead of Sheriff here. Davis and Sean Murphy are going side by side again here. I'm not sure whether Murphy is having a bad run through Dunlop consistently, or if Davis is just having a good one, but the two of them have ended up side by side through there on the last 2 consecutive laps.
Sean Murphy almost surviving a bit of a bad run through Degner too. He's going to have enough of a run to keep himself safe towards the hairpin. But Luke Davis trying to find a move here and showing how difficult it can be here at Suzuka to make an overtake work for you. You can have a pace advantage and just not be able to make the move stick for you. It's difficult to slip up the inside and get the move done fully, especially somewhere like Spoon, especially somewhere like Degner 1 and Degner 2. You have to have full commitment at a place of the circuit like that, and if you don't have most of the car alongside or even ahead, you're not really going to be able to make the move stick, and that's the issue for the time being for Luke Davis, as Sean Murphy will go on his merry way. It's where the biggest gap in the train is really at the moment, between 13th and 14th over, sorry, for 12th and 13th overall, Vanaro to Sean Murphy, and I think Luke Davis will have seen that and will really be trying to force this overtake accordingly. Another mistake is not going to help in his cause.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if it was mistakes before, but that one certainly was. As he went into the final chicane, Luke Davis is going to have a great chance to get into second in the arms here. And look at the lead that is being given to Colin McKenzie, by the way. As a result of all this, he's one of those Acuras just going through the bottom of his shot there. And here comes Davis. No, not quite. It just shows you how difficult it is to overtake round here. Oh, as he goes down the inside, he does try it. He's not quite managed it, though, as we have a look here at Christopher Rhines, who won't be the last one to end up in the fence there at 130R, but that's a big accident. Oh, and he was smashed into as well by another one of the Porsches, and one of the McLarens as well. Got into the wall afterwards, too. The McLaren was Dave Jensen. The Porsche was Aaron Sunday, who went straight into the side of Christopher Rhines there, who was helpless to avoid the accident.
Yeah, just got to find a way through, and nothing he could really do in the end, and that is not what he would want to see. And it's still the early stages of this race, 7 minutes gone, and still a long way to go. Maybe a little bit of time to recover, but a circuit like this with, not a year to get back towards the front of the field, it's going to feel very much like his race is heavily damaged and far more over than it was before, even though there is still a good, 12, 13 laps of this race still left to run, if not a couple more. So time to recover, but it's difficult, isn't it? Especially when you've only got 35 minutes in a race in total.
Exactly. It is not a long race in the grand scheme of things. We will have a pit stop, though, in case you've not followed this series before. We are fuel limited, fuel restricted, and so you will have to make a pit stop at some point around the halfway mark. The window isn't massively wide, but wide enough. Here is what happened to Sunday. How unsighted was he here? Oh, he wouldn't. Oh, goodness me, he wouldn't have seen that coming. Don't forget, we're slightly higher on this shot from the roof than what Aaron Sunday is in the car. Because of the way that he was running behind that Ferrari, and it wasn't really his fault or the Ferrari's fault, but the way that we were running together kind of meant that I reckon Sunday was probably unsighted there. There we go. Yeah, look, he actually, that's pretty unlucky, to be honest, because Rhines was sat there in the middle of the road for quite a while, but the way that, and it was unusual the way that they were running with each other here in the Ferrari, but the way that they were interacting with one another meant that Sunday was like perfectly unsighted. You couldn't have hid that from him if you couldn't have hid that better if you'd tried.
Perfect jump scare, really. I mean, coming up to that part of the circuit, there is nothing to, you know, that's going to concern you, and then all of a sudden, the car in front of you disappears and reveals an obstacle that you can't avoid. Lucky that we're in the sim, really. That could have been a very nasty incident if we were in the real world, but I guess we'd get yellow flags and marshals furiously.
Oh, not that quickly.
So we wouldn't get that kind of... Well, exactly. Well, I guess, but, you know, maybe you'd hope that there was a little bit more caution taken on by the drivers. But anyway, we don't have to worry about that because it's happened in the sim. And all that really happens is, you know, the drivers have a little bit of a jump, have a sit back down and think, oh, I'm back in the pit lane now. So, yeah, it's a little bit calmer in this way.
I think as well we'll be seeing Aaron Sunday a little bit later on in the week on RaceSpotTV in the Porsche Club of America, so maybe we'll have another chance to see him later on. Luis Ortiz, by the way, has gone back to pit lane as well here as someone was dropping down the field quite substantially down in the pack while a lot was going on actually. Luke Davis was passing Sean Murphy, and it looks like Matt Sheriff had also followed through, and while that was going on, Dale Pedersen, as you would have seen in the shot, was trying to pass Sully Sad in the Porsche. Chase Steffi is catching up as well in the Acura in 7th place, so this is a group for 5th at the moment, and it's clear that Sully Sad is not as quick as those 4 ahead, and maybe not even as quick as the next 5 or so. This is what happened to Evander Joseph. Meanwhile, further on in the background, that's a big spin that I'm surprised we've not seen more of so far through Degner 1.
Yeah, difficult corner deck, then one. The rear end can slide away from you, especially with the grip that you're asking from the car. Degner 2 really is where you're thinking, or where a lot of your thought process is going to in that part of the corner. So you can always make a slight mistake in Degner 1 trying to set yourself up for Degner 2, and that's the first time we've seen it tonight. And as you said, with 42 cars, you maybe would have expected 1 or 2 to go around in the opening couple of laps, especially with the higher fuel loads that are in the cars. But lucky to see that we've held on this long before we've seen a bit of a mistake, and it is always a danger point on the circuit, and one that we're going to have to keep an eye out for the rest of the evening.
Matt Sheriff has got past Luke Davis for 13th place. That was changing towards turn 1, and Sheriff has now got through on that battle for second in the AM class, which you'll be quite pleased about, because they'll probably continue now to squabble between themselves now that he's done that. So that's another change inside the top 20 at the moment. Still 36 cars running. Not sure of the few of those who have pitted in now for quite some time with quite a lot of damage, as we've just seen that accident and a couple of replays of it on the way down in towards the final chicane. This is still a battle for 5th, and they're still all in the same positions as before. It's getting to that stage in the race where you start to think less about on-track overtakes and maybe about trying to get through in the pit lane. It's not quite done back here either, as Ian Southern now is getting attacked by Thomas Rep in the Mustang on the right-hand side. He's on the outside line here. Oh, for 17th, but he just breaks early as Southern comes across him. That's Pete Medger in the other McLaren just up ahead of them. These guys seem a lot more able to overtake each other than the pros out front do.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Sheriff's been in a couple of spots, isn't he, up to P13 now, getting through on the likes of Davis and Sean Murphy. I think we'll have to see if the same can be happening between AM drivers. Having said that, Dale Pedersen looks like he's got past Sully Sad in towards the Casio triangle, and here it is. Sully Sad under pressure now from Jay Steffi as they work their way off the final corner and down the main straight and diving down the hill towards turn number 1. Sully Sad will be putting Dale Pedersen under quite a bit of pressure, but into the slipstream. Jay Steffi is sniffing around as well. If there's any mistake from the top, from the front 2 of this battle, he will be there to jump. Outside line for Sully Sad. Can he make this one work? It's going to be Dale Pedersen's prerogative on the inside line, and he should just about hold on, but clearly some aggressive racing, but forceful moves, good moves from Dale Pedersen.
And maybe all we have to do to get them to overtake is stop looking at them, because as soon as we looked away there, they suddenly started to fight, and Sully Sad seems to be under a lot of pressure now. This is Jay Steffi right at the back of him, and Felice is queuing up as well. That was very close. Steffi very nearly rear-ended Sully Sad, and surely through the high-load corners of the S's, that would have been a short notice for Sully Sad to be spinning round. Again, he looks up the inside there to Steffi. Can't do it. What about Felice into Degner 2? He does. He gets into the back of him. But the Acura stable enough to just withstand that. And he holds on to 7th place and the car. Jet Steffi, what about into the hairpin? He knows the attack's coming, you see. Puts it to the defence. Oh dear, that was almost comical. They all stacked up, the concertina effect, and they all come to a dead stop nearly there. Oh dear, in the background. Who was that? Andrew Trickey, was it? Oh no, Conor McKenzie, excuse me. The AM leader got a real hit on the front there as the others seemed to just park in front of him. He smashed into the rear, and on the exit he spun up the rear tyres and he's lost a place.
Luckily enough, he's not going to be too far further behind, and he's still ahead, in the lead of the AM category. But let's have a look at it from the 15. It just did stack up here, didn't it? Everybody pretty much knocked into each other. Then trying to get himself going again as he touched the curb. Well, it doesn't make any difference. He's touched that curb on the outside, and that'll be what kicked him half around. Lucky that he was able to hold it, and he only lost the one spot. Could have been a lot worse for the 15.
Certainly could. I mean, I feel like for the drivers of this experience, they must have driven around this circuit and seen this circuit enough to know that was going to happen. But maybe it's just because I had hindsight, but you could see that happening from a long way out when there was so many drivers on top of each other towards the hairpin. Surely they would have known that was going to happen. But anyway, Ian Sutherland has got up to 16th place. You can see on the tower on the left-hand side that is ahead of Thomas Rep. I was wondering where Pete Measure has gone. He's made an early pit stop. Now, I think that's going to be very clever for Pete Measure. A lot of these drivers are getting caught up in battles that they can't win, in endless battles, seemingly. And there's one of them. Sean Murphy's been involved in one of them, and he's just fallen afoul of the opening couple of corners. This is exactly why pitting in and getting into clean air on your own is probably a good idea from Pete Measure.
Yeah, just being able to make sure that you can run the race to your own pace. Sean Murphy, it's a horrible place to get stuck. I mean, we saw drivers going left and right there for a split second. Mostly drivers going around the outside, easier line to really be able to pin, but tricky little moments. Ryan Chandler now trying to go to the inside down at Degnall 1. That's never going to work out on the back of Nick Bruno, who would very much prefer if he stayed in behind and didn't make some kind of outlandish move. To be careful, because the hairpin is a place where we see some sense to the inside. Biggest braking zone on the racetrack in that regard, but there's nothing going on in terms of the moves, and this train will stay pretty compact with 20 minutes on the clock.
Certainly. Let's see what... Oh, that was a bit rude from Evander Josefeld there. Got straight into the side of one of the McLarens, and he came to a dead stop almost, trying to give up the place again. I think... Oh, no, he came into the pit lane. That's what happened. So I think that was with... either Jakob Fichtner, I think, or somebody else, one of the other McLarens, but Fichtner's lost a lot of time on this lap, so it might have been him. Either way, that was a pretty big amount of contact there in towards turn 1 and 2. Through the chicane come the leaders. Now, do any of them decide to come in? No is still the answer. I'm surprised about that. I guess when you're further up front like this, you don't quite have that option because there is quite a lot of traffic for you to come out in when you are the leader like this. I don't know how much time they'd exactly lose, but in a 10-second pit stop plus the travel through the pit lane, maybe losing about 25 seconds or so, that will put these guys right in the midfield or the back end of the AM field, and that's not where they want to be either.
Maybe even slower than being up in this train, so they're going to have to be careful about where they go with the pit stops. The same could be said for Jason Park and Ricardo Delgado. Interesting to see which way they are going to end up going on the pit stops. Park still trying to hold on, of course, to his lead. I believe if he was to hold on to the lead to the checkered flag, he would become the 131st GT3 winner in PRL history, just to show how many drivers have been right towards the front in so many of the races. But he should be 131. I may have got that wrong, but that could be. That would be the maths. Ricardo Delgado is looking to repeat his win, though, of course, and Brett Thurman, along with Dave Bush, have all got wins themselves. Not many, but they wouldn't mind adding to that tally. The problem is
just for
isn't really much going on at the front.
Sorry, just for reference, how many GT3 races have there been? Roughly? Do you know that? Maybe you don't know.
I don't. I'm looking it up for you.
Because that sounded like not very many to me. But you know, we have roughly 40 a year for those who have not been following. Just under 40 a year. Although I suppose if you count fixed and sprint, that makes it up to 80, 70, 80, doesn't it? So yeah, that is quite a lot in the end, really. Over the back straight they go, and that's Jack Keane very close to the back of Felix Feliz here in the Porsches. He's gonna... Oh, he's gone! Felix Feliz has gone for a spin! It's exactly what I was talking about with the Porsches earlier on. The rear end surely too light, and it's still weaving round and fighting him. He's eventually got it under control, but my goodness, those rear tyres are going to be burning now. He's got to come into the pit lane surely just to cool things down, and he does. That's the smart thing to do there for Felix Police. He very nearly ended his race in the wall.
How did he make that penultimate corner? Because he was off the circuit on the outside. I was convinced he was going to go flying off into the gravel trap. Somehow he managed to keep it on the circuit. Don't quite know how he did that, but he's into the pit lane now, and we'll be having a bit of downtime. There is a car without headlights. That's unsettling. That's almost quite scary and ominous. Going down into turn number 1.
Is it? Is it Warder? No, it's a lap driver. Someone laps down. Oh no, it's Regan Chandler. It is, yeah. Goodness me. How has he done this? We'll try and get to the bottom of it, but surely you can't even see where he's going.
Well, there's no lights visible, but there's you can see at the front there's lights on the car. So it's the awkward conundrum of is that kind of some kind of magic going on, or is there? It's probably the visual glitch, isn't it? That's probably the more reasonable explanation. But Regan Chandler pulling out all the stops to make this intriguing race, and now he's being caught up by behind. I'll be interested to see whether other drivers can see his lights, whether that's just a visual glitch for some spectators.
Oh, well, he's gone off there, and now he's going to be followed. See, I don't think he does have headlights. I thought that was the Ferrari illuminating the road in front of him. Yeah, he doesn't have headlights. It was the Ferrari shining a light on him, and now he really can't see where he's going. He's just he's pulling off, and he's going to return to pit lane. He's done the sensible thing. I think he probably could have continued on there, but it was probably quite dangerous to do so. Yeah, I'm absolutely sure there were no headlights there, but the Ferrari was just illuminating it for him. This is Felix Felice's wheel work. What the hell is that about? He's turned full to the right, to the left, I should say, to pull it back to the right, and then slides in the grass again before the penultimate corner. That was a very weird slide, but he came into pit lane, had his normal pit stop, and from what I can see, nothing really looks wrong.
No, which is somehow incredible from what we saw. Again, I still don't know how he made that penultimate corner, really. He was off the road and sliding into it, but still somehow managed to hit the apex. So credit to him where credit is due. 50 minutes to go. There's a lot of drivers now coming down pit road. Thurman, Sad, Keane, Bonaro. All of those drivers from the top 10 coming into the pit lane, leaving out the likes of Jason Park and Ricardo Delgado at the front of the field. We'll have to see where they blend out of the pit lane, but I think they're going to be in amongst some of the traffic, which won't be the easiest to navigate and may give Solly Sad another couple of problems that he didn't necessarily need. He's going to be right behind Neil Alexander, mind you.
Absolutely. This is going to be a very interesting second half to this race. We're pretty much halfway through the pit stop cycle now. Thurman, though, is in perhaps a good position here. Let's see, though, when it works itself out with everybody else. So we follow Luke Davis here, just behind Matt Sheriff at the moment in that McLaren. This is how that is. That is something I'm surprised doesn't happen more often actually at this circuit. The pit entry is a bit awkward, especially if you're taking a line like that. It's Nick Bruno who was trying to get in pit lane. In the end, couldn't do it, and Regan Chandler has, in the end, lost his front lights. He won't have known at this point because there are front lights on the front straight helping illuminate the way, but he will have certainly found out towards turn 1, and he was effectively relying on those drivers behind him to show the way for him there.
Like would have come into the pit lane next lap anyway. Just a shame that he had to end up coming back to pit road, which was, of course, the noble and right thing to do, but not exactly what he would have been wanting to do. Especially given the decent position that he found himself in the mid stages of the race. Jason Park come down pit road, though. 30 minutes left on the clock. Delgado's going to follow him as well. David Bush is going to stay out, however, and go one more lap. See where Park and Delgado come out of the pit lane. You'd expect it's going to be around the drivers that have already pitted, but where that's going to be on the circuit with the drivers that are coming into the pit lane remains to be seen.
It's not quite the absolute limit because David Bush carries on, but almost everybody else is in. And hopefully Bush has got enough fuel to finish the lap with. Warden's going to continue on as well, though only just behind, in front of Jason Park and Ricardo Delgado here, who make their way back out onto the circuit. Where's Furman? He's going to be third pretty comfortably here, is Brett Furman. So that's a good result for him out the pit stop phase. Nothing really gained or lost. Pedersen, Steffi come out right next to each other. Pineda's quite close to them as well, although he hasn't stopped yet. That could be awkward. Sully Sad is in there, in towards turn 1. Round the outside in one of the Acuras, there goes Colin McKenzie, who's right in with these guys as well. Here's Pineda in the Mustang. He's right up to speed, just in behind Steffi, who got passed by Pedersen. And Sully Sad is just at the back of him here as well. This is an awkward place to find yourself, having not stopped yet.
Yeah, and Pineda almost on a different line to Jay Steffi there through Dunlop corner. Won't be really able to make a move down into Degner 1, but he may start holding up Sully Sad a touch. And we'll have to see if the 79 can find a way through, maybe at the hairpin, maybe it's Boom, maybe at the final corners. So let's see as they make their way out of Degner 2. I don't think it's going to be a good enough run for Sully Sad to make a send into the hairpin. No, absolutely nowhere near close enough to make a sensible sort of send, and Pineda will stay where he is. David Bush going one lap longer may be working in his favour. We'll have to see whether he can make this work. He's not really gaining much to the likes of Walden and Jason Park, so you'd expect him to come out in P3 ahead of Brett Thurman, but the stop may be a little bit shorter for David Bush, considering that he'll have to take on a little less fuel with one lap less to run in this race. So that's always going to be a consideration that he made when deciding which pit lap to come in on.
Yeah, this is surely the last lap now, with just less than 11 minutes to go. David Bush in, and surely Herbert Pineda will do the same at the end of this lap. Let's see, they are coming into pit, as does Roder Warden, who I forgot was out there, of course, but he is was only right ahead of Jason Park, who's now got a second and a half or so over Ricardo Delgado to nurse through these final 6 laps of this race. There goes Warden into his box. Pineda does as well. As David Bush gets out, he will be 4th place. So his long-running strategy has pretty much given him the same position as before as well. No big changes here, really, as far as the pit stops have gone to the new order. It is very, very similar. Ricardo Delgado was 1.7 seconds quicker than Jason Park in the pit lane, and hasn't really got a lot to show for it, to be honest. He's still a second and a half behind.
Yeah, Delgado trying to just put a dent into Jason Park at the moment, not succeeding. Park holding firm and doing a really impressive job to try and hold to the lead in this race. Of course, he won't have led start to finish, but he will have been in the net lead start to finish. It's fair to say. Andrew Venaro going off the circuit, dropping down to P15 behind the likes of Davis and Pete Megier, who's just about to come into the frame, and Megier of course, or come into contact with Venaro and will find himself ahead. But Venaro, with a couple of little moments, has cost him maybe a top 10 finish in the end in this race. But Andrew Trickett is not going to complain. He's up into P10. He's just going to be careful of the AM leader just in behind him.
Colin McKenzie, of course, because it's dark, we can't really see whether there is any front-end damage to that Acura after a pretty big crash, well, not crash, but bump at the hairpin only a few laps ago. Seems to be still running okay, so we can presume that the front end is largely undamaged on that Acura. So he runs 11th, Colin McKenzie, just 2 positions ahead of Luke Davis, and it looks like on yet another week Colin McKenzie is going to take the AM victory here. He took it last week at Jerez when he finished in 10th place overall. He didn't take it at Daytona, as Buck Hamilton had a fantastic result, finishing on the podium as an AM driver. But he did have it the week before at Long Beach. So it's been a good season and a good start to the season so far for Colin McKenzie. As I mentioned earlier, 6th place in the overall point standings, never mind just in the AMs at the moment. He's having a great start to the season, and I'd imagine he will sit and watch Felix Feliz and Andrew Trickett battle with each other here before getting involved himself. As further up, Dale Pedersen's made a mistake because Jay Steffi has got through very easily there, and suddenly Pedersen is down to 6th position.
Steffi, I'm sure, will be delighted to find himself in the top 5 now with only 8 minutes left on the clock, a handful of laps to run. Pedersen may have to try and come back at him, but for Steffi, I think the real target would be to just drive into the darkness, about 6 seconds up to David Bush for 3rd, and so a decent amount of time to try and just drive into. Not much to see in front of him, mainly just a consolidation of P5, I think, will be his ticket tonight. A little gaggle of cars just in the background. That was Felix Feliz, Andrew Trickett and Colin McKenzie making their way through Degner 2 as they run through. And to note on Colin McKenzie, yes, he's the AM leader, and being P6 overall, when you combine the standings, means that I can't imagine he'll be in the AM category for too much longer after this season, if I'm honest.
Well, I've thought that for a while, but he has been an AM for a while as well. So I don't know. Maybe he will continue on. Sometimes a lot of the, or certainly this is how it used to be. I don't know anymore because I've not driven in the PRL for about 18 months now. But it certainly used to be a lot of the categories based around your I rating. So if his I rating's not really going up, it might be preventing him from also moving up the categories. That is completely unsubstantiated. but I think that might be one of the factors taken into account when you're thinking about this. That is Sunny Sad going deep into the final corners, and Felix Feliz is surely going to have a chance at coming through. Sorry, Jared Keane, I should say. Another one of the Porsches is looking at have a chance at coming through here. It takes a mistake normally around this circuit for you to be offered up an opportunity, and even this is only a half chance for Keane, but he'll know that this could be his only chance. He's around the outside of Sully Sad, but he can't do it. Sad dives to the inside through turn 7. He's going to get nowhere. It's Jared Keane here. He'll be on the outside for the S's. He's got to work out a move here now. He's on the different line through the S's. He's got to use one of these different lines to try and go through if he can, but it's so difficult even when you get a chance like that.
Yeah, and getting offline halfway up the sector, it's going to mean that he's going to be costed about 5-6 tenths, and he's not going to be able to be right on the rear end of the 79 car. So he'll have to find somewhere else to make a move and really get himself back into a place where he's only a tenth or two behind and in position to maybe make a bit of a send, maybe some slipstream down towards the Casse Triangle, down towards the turn number 1 to make this move work for him. Mistake from Sully Sad opens the door again though. Jared Keane not able to walk into the hairpin, difficult to send it from that far back, and the 22 will stay where he is. There should be 3 more laps upon completion of this one, so there's still time for moves to be made here, but it's not a great deal of time, and Jared Keane will be keen to get through sooner rather than later.
You're not the first one to make that pun, and you won't be the last. That's for sure.
Absolutely not.
No, we'll take that opportunity any day of the week. Felix Feliz is catching these guys as a result of this, and so are the rest behind. Actually, Andrew Trickett is there as well. You can see Colin McKenzie, you can see Matt Sheriff as well. So have a look at this on board for Felix Feliz, and he can very much see what's going on here. Now let's watch through 130R. Just listen to the slight lift off there. I wonder whether Feliz was doing that earlier on in the race and whether he's started to do that ever since his big moment. But surely coming through that corner, he's got to be thinking about that slide every time he's going through there.
Yeah, it's such a difficult tightrope to walk with the sliding, but also wanting to keep the pace up here, it's so tricky, but having to manage that is part of the race. Doesn't help with the dark, doesn't help with the conditions, doesn't help with the pressure that's being applied to him by drivers around him, but got to try and get it to the end. 3 laps it will be remaining in this race to try and get this car home in some decent points, possibly in the offing for some of these drivers as they work their way through. Top 10s, I think, will be heavily appreciated this evening with some of the difficulties that we've seen and with some of the drivers that have almost fallen by the wayside. The likes of Colin McKenzie still trying to fight to get inside that top 10, getting very close, it seemed, through Sector 1 and up the hill.
Commiserations to Thomas Rep, who unfortunately has had to retire because his newborn child has woken up. So commiserations to him, but he made it 27 minutes throughout the race, so hopefully he had a good time while he was there anyway. And there we go. Colin McKenzie gets close to Andrew Trickett here in 10th place. Doesn't have a move down the inside here though. The longer McKenzie's involved in this, the more this invites the likes of Luke Davis into the battle as well. And just see him in the background there, the second set of headlights behind him. He's in one of the McLarens today, as McKenzie is just in front in the Acura. 2 fairly similar shapes, but with only a couple of laps to go, Davis very much running out of time. McKenzie in that awkward situation of not quite knowing whether to overtake Andrew Trickett or not just for the moment, and whether he's going to be able to tie his best result with the season with another 10th.
Yeah, wouldn't mind a top 10 finish in the end of this race, especially with the up and down nature this race has thrown up. Jason Park's going faster, by the way. I believe he's just set the fastest lap of the race in the last lap, 59.2. Scintillating pace. A lot of the drivers towards the back end of the top 10 are currently circulating in the 2-minute, low 2 minutes. 2 minute 5, 2 minute 7, 2 minute 4. Of course, these are 2 minute point fours, meaning that Park is just going faster and faster. Incredible pace towards the end of the race, showing that he had, if anything, more in the back pocket throughout most of the starting phases of this race.
Jason Park, by the way, finished 6th place last week, so despite his poor opening couple of rounds, he has got a top 10 to his name, but no top 5s yet this season, and this would be a good result for him. Matt Sheriff has gone off. He was just in between Mackenzie and Luke Davis. Oh no, sorry, he was just blinking for a second there. My apologies. That's what I get for going too early and saying he's spun off the road. He's still fine, he's just blinking, and he's okay. He is still in 12th place. Furman defends pretty hard from David Bush here. This is a pass that's on as well, but he's got so little time here as Bush to actually try and make this work and actually find a place to make an overtake.
Yeah, not long left to find it, though. And David Bush III knows that he can see that podium. It's dangling in front of him, a bit like a carrot. But let's see if he can try and find a way through. Brett Thurman is trying to hold on, but doesn't really look like he's terribly comfortable in that 69 car for the time being. And David Bush is right on hand to pounce on this final lap, gaining towards 130R with a slipstream coming into full effect for David Bush. He's just not going to be close enough to make a move at the final corner. One lap to try and find it, and the podium is the prize.
It's really closes in there, does Bush, and maybe that is a window into what he can do at the final braking zone of this race, down in towards that chicane. I think Thurman sees this, though, in towards turn number 1 as Bush's best chance to get through. Tell that by the way he was defending on the home straight, but nowhere near close enough in the Audi. So it will have to be the final chicane, I suppose. And that is what Bush will now be aiming for. Late on the brakes, perhaps, down the inside if he wants to try and grab a podium here. Something he hasn't managed since Long Beach 3 weeks ago in the opening round of this season. Further out front, though, Jason Park has lost a lot of time. 7/10 of a second, in fact, on this last lap. I don't suppose he'd be particularly concerned, given his gap, but if it was a bit closer, he would be a bit worried right now.
Yeah, I think a slight cause for concern if it was closer, but for the time being, a nice enough margin that I think he's just going to be trying to cruise to the end. That's a bit of a cruise to the end, maybe trying to use the old layout or a different layout for Dave Peterson in the 35. That's not the optimal racing line, and he, I'm sure, won't be doing that again, that's for sure. But for Jason Park, all he's thinking about is nailing the next couple of apexes, getting this car to victory lane. It's been a very impressive drive from the 55, and a drive that is worthy of winning this race after what was a fantastic qualifying lap to put him in pole position in the first place.
Certainly was. And he's had quite fantastic pace as well, especially when you consider it to his previous race results here in this series this season. It's been something that we've not really seen so far. He's never been on pole or on the top step of the podium in the PRL, but all that is about to change tonight as Jason Park comes into the final couple of corners and comes over the line to win here at Suzuka. Round 4 of the PRL GT3 Fixed Series goes to Jason Park by over 2 seconds at the line, ahead of championship leader Ricardo Delgado, who will extend his advantage at the front. Meanwhile, Jared Keen's got past Sully Sad. He's second in the championship with Sad, and suddenly he'll be losing more points tonight as he finishes down in 8th. He just about hangs on from Feliz. Trickett just stays ahead of Conor McKenzie, who is going to win in the AMS as well. A great drive from him. Another win for Conor McKenzie in the AMS, and another night where he will extend his championship margin all over again.
Evenings for our championship leaders. Delgado not quite getting the win, but still getting a P2, and with Jason Park not really entitled contention, I don't think Delgado will be overly worried. Colin McKenzie, of course, beating Luke Davis and Pete Messier, who got on the podium in the end, with only 3 AM drivers by the checkered flag finding themselves in that top 16, but really impressive drive, particularly from Jason Park. He didn't have to do much defending, but could we say park to the bus, Ewan? Is that too far?
No. It's not quite accurate. Just save that for a better opportunity.
Oh, I'll use it again. I have no qualms about that.
Well, yeah. Well, we'll save it for another time, or just do it again. Jason Park takes the race victory ahead of Ricardo Delgado, Brett Furman, and David Bush to make it 4 manufacturers. By the way, in the top 4, Jay Steffi and Dale Pedersen were next. They finished just ahead of a mob, really, for 7th place. Jared Keane got ahead of Sully Sad right at the end, and Felix Feliz not quite able to take his chance to get up the order. Andrew Trickett rounded out the top 10. Colin McKenzie won in the AMS, just ahead of Matt Sheriff, who was between the top 2 in the AMS. Luke Davis, who finished 2nd, he was 13th in the end, and Pete Measure, who was 14th. Then Andrew Venaro. Ross Sortino, the first of the Ferraris, finished 16th ahead of Ryan Chandler, with Ian Southern, Joe Pugero, and Wardo Walden, who ran very long in his stint. First stint finishing in the top 20. Nick Bruno was 21st after his clash with one of the Chandlers before the pit road. He finished 21st ahead of Pineda, who also ran long in his first stint. Neil Alexander was 23rd ahead of Dave Peterson, who went off towards the end. Kevin Berkowitz rounded out the top 25 with Drew DeWessy next, and Ian Cabana, Robert Jeffries, Jared DePlue, and Jakob Finkner. Sam Smeltzer was the last of those who finished on the lead lap, ahead of Sean Murphy, who was a few laps down. Thomas Rett retired 4 laps from the finish, along with Aaron Sunday, Evander Jonesfeld, David Morse, and Dave Jensen. Some of those actually crossed the line at the end, some of them didn't. 7 laps down for Reagan Chandler after his incident before the pit lane. Louis Ortiz and Christopher Ryans finished their races in the first third or so. Let's have a chat with the race winner, Jason Park, after that race here tonight. Congratulations, Jason, on the win. I mean, it was very impressive pace from you, I've got to say, and considering you not have a top 5 all season, forgive me for saying it was a slight surprise as well. Just what quite went right for you this time round?
Yeah, I don't know if it's this track just suits my driving style, but I was able to put in that pole lap, I think, on my first one out of the pits. And I was just I got to jump at the start and kept that lead throughout the whole race.
I know that you weren't under pressure in terms of actually side-by-side battling for much, but actually how much do you think that pole lap and that pole position really gave you the platform to win this race with the track position to defend with?
I think it definitely helped. I mean, this track is pretty hard to pass on, especially through the S's, and being able to get that jump. I don't know if the guys behind me there were battling on the first lap, but that gave me a bit of cushion to keep the lead, and I was able to bring it home at the end.
I don't think they were battling too much. I think you can give yourself some credit. Congratulations on the win here tonight, Jason, and thanks for chatting to us as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much. Jason Park, the winner here in the Fixed Series, ahead of Ricardo Delgado, who finished in 2nd place. Congratulations on your 3rd podium of the season, Ricardo. Just how does it feel to have such consistency through the first 4 races of this season now?
It feels great. My first time racing this series, to be able to accomplish that in those opening rounds.
And yeah, the worst finish of 4th place, which is pretty remarkable. How confident are you that you're going to be able to keep this up for the remaining 5 rounds of this season?
Well, we'll give it a go. I'll try. I just got here yesterday from Daytona and really didn't practice on a night session. So Jason was real fast and consistent, and I wasn't unable to match it.
Well, congratulations on finishing 2nd, nevertheless, and thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
Thanks, man. Have a good one. Thanks to everyone.
Thanks very much. Ricardo Delgado there in 2nd place, ahead of Brett Furman, who finished in 3rd. Welcome, Brett, as well. Good to have you with us. A podium for you once again for the 2nd week in a row and the 3rd time this season as well. You're also stringing together quite some good results so far this season. How pleased have you been with these first 4 rounds?
Oh, I'm very happy. I'll take a podium any day. It's been a tough week. I'm not in my advanced sim racing rig, and so I'm struggling in my home brew. I call it my birdcage rig because it's very flexible.
I mean, other than Daytona, you've been on the podium every time now, but it's been some of those circuits very, very difficult to overtake on, I've got to say. How important has qualifying been so far this season, as I say, other than Daytona, to actually your finishing result because of the difficulty in overtaking?
Well, we saw it tonight. I finished where I qualified, and it's so tough, and it's been something I've been working on this season, and I'm just not quite there yet. And I got one pole, but I need some more. So just keep working on it. And we got some fast guys, and congratulations to Jason. Great drive.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to seeing you next week at Zandvoort. For now, thanks for chatting to us, and congratulations on another podium.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Thanks very much, Brett Furman there in third place. Then Colin McKenzie, who won in the AMS and finished 11th place overall this evening. Welcoming Colin as well. Another AM victory for you here, but you spent most of the race stuck in with the AMs. Just how was that sort of trying to get through on them, or just trying to avoid them? I don't know which you were trying to do, but you eventually stayed out of trouble and won the race.
Yeah, I mean, they were grouping up in front of me a little bit and fighting, and so my main concern was just trying to not get collected in them and just keep my race going. I love Suzuka. It's probably one of my favorite tracks on the service, so I was just really excited to be where I was and kind of had some breathing room for a while.
And what about some of the rest of the tracks on this schedule? We got Zandvoort coming up next week, Road Atlanta the week after that, Donington. Lots of circuits I've noticed where qualifying is quite important. How are you feeling about those circuits still yet to come?
Yeah, I mean, just like tonight, right? Suzuka, there's not really too many places to pass, so qualifying is super important. And so as long as I can get those laps down, I think I should be in some pretty good position to keep scoring some points here.
Absolutely, it feels like the story of the season for sure. Congratulations on the win in the AMS again, Colin. And thanks for chatting to us as well.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks very much. That's Colin McKenzie, winner of the AM class here tonight in the GT3 Fixed Series. Well, don't forget, it's not over yet. We've still got another 40 minutes of racing yet to come in the GT3 Fixed... we've just had the Fixed Series. The GT3 Sprint Series coming up next. More minutes of racing still yet to come here tonight. It's the PRL GT3 Sprint Series here. Time to change the setups and change the drivers and get ready for another exciting round of this championship. It is also round 4 of this series, and we've got an equally close championship fight going on after the opening 3 rounds of this one at Long Beach, Daytona and Jerez. We'll have a look at those championship standings now as Kim Levesque's taking a 6-point lead over Juan Lemus into this one. Elliot Budzinski is in 3rd place ahead of Kevin Denois with Chris Beach rounding out the top 5. Then it's Ukman Eloui with Cementerio, who was up there last season, down in 7th this time round. Kevin Simpson is 8th ahead of Steve Baker and Nick Ludecki, who round out the pro drivers' top 10 standings. Brett Ziti is leading by just 7 points in the AM standings ahead of Kevin Kiernitz. Devin Brock is 3rd ahead of Gavin Ammerman with Mark Elliott rounding out the top 5. Marshall Scare is 6th ahead of Dino Vella with Jermaine Warren a few points further back and Justin Welsh having only been at the 1 round so far. Adam Henwood at the bottom with no points to his name just yet, with not a race started yet for him, unfortunately. In the team standings, Apex Racing Team Advanced Motorsports are leading by just 12 points ahead of Field and S Racing, with Vimmer Racing Team Mexico GP and SimCity Racing's first team involved as well in that championship battle. TPG's Everand at the top 5 with Solpec in 6th ahead of SCR3 and SRTE in at 7th and 8th. SimCity Racing 2 are in 9th ahead of the other Solpec team in 10th position in the team standings. Similar story story here, Dara, to be honest. Just over a minute left in qualifying, and qualifying equally as important here. So far, Elliot Budzinski with the fastest time.
A little bit brighter for this race, and Budzinski looking to brighten up that timing page with the purple times, as he has doing so far. He's not got much of an advantage. They're only the 1/10 to Nick Ledecky, but it's interesting to see those two right at the front of the field. We'll see how if and how they can work together off the start of this race. Ryan Lemieux in P3 and Ryan Puchtel as well on what would be a provisional row 2 for the time being. Again, not a big gap between some of these drivers. From Ryan Puchtel in 4th down to what's that? Kevin De Nooijer in 9th is 0.02 of a second. It's absolutely crazy how close it is at the moment, and it just shows how important qualifying is and how fine the margins are in the Sprint Series.
And the top 25 covered by less than a second overall as well. It's a fantastically close session. By the way, this session is opening a bit earlier than as you will have noticed, the fixed series should be at 4:30, the race starting. So it should be getting dusky, but not particularly dark by the end of the race. It will still be the 25th of January. There is Simon Theriault, who is going a bit quicker down towards the end of the lap, but I'm not sure he's going to improve quite overall. So he's currently lying in 6th place, just over 0.2 behind, as you say, from Puchtel right the way down to De Nooijer is indeed 0.02 of a second. That is not a graphical glitch there. That is legitimate. That is phenomenal. Theriault goes over the line. It doesn't look like he has improved as the checker flag now waves. There is Elliot Budzinski. Looks like he's taken pole in the Acura, ahead of another one of the Acuras, Nick Ledecky, maybe the car to have in this qualifying session at least.
Yeah, and it's looking pretty good for Budzinski and Ledecky at the front of the field. I mean, to have 1/10 of an advantage in qualifying when it is so close in the back end of the top 10 shows how good that lap is from Elliot Budzinski. Really impressive. And we'll see what he can do from the front of the field if he can try and pull away from the rest. He comes into this race, of course, P3 in the championship, ahead of Kevin De Nooijer after the issues that the Team BGZ driver had at the end of last week's race. And this pole, I should say, will get him that one step closer. Of course, no point for pole this season, but just by having the pole position means that he may be able to close that gap to Ryan Lemieux and Guillaume Levesque, who will start at the moment on row number 2.
There goes Levesque. Did he improve there? Maybe. Very close. He might well have done. No, Corbin Lenaway, though, does improve. He's up to 4th place with that, 3rd with that time. Levesque down to 4th. And now, there's Chris Beats through the final corners as well in the Porsche, one of the SimCity Racing drivers. Kicking up a load of gravel through the final corner, which is the thing in qualifying. Didn't really seem to be much of a thing in the last race. There goes Beats. Oh, what a time! What a great lap right at the end from Chris Beats in the Porsche. He's taken it by the looks of things as the checker flag's been waving. Elliot Budzinski will have had a small smile on his face, but no, he responds. Budzinski with a 58.1 has taken pole right at the very end. Beats with a surprise, and then Budzinski puts him back to bed again as Elliot Budzinski's taken pole. That was a very surprisingly dramatic end to that session.
Yeah, Budzinski just about going to nick it in the end. Beats would have thought that he had it for half a second, but Budzinski cruelly almost taking it away and getting the lap done when it absolutely mattered. What an end to the session. It looked pretty mundane up near the front for a few minutes, but right at the end, Budzinski stealing it at the death.
Well, that was very unexpected. The fact that Chris Beats came all the way from 10th, pretty much from nowhere there, and took pole briefly was surprising in itself, but in the end, Budzinski responds and takes his first pole position of the season, joins Kevin De Nooijer and Simon Theriault as taking pole position so far. De Nooijer's got 2 to his name, by the way. And now Budzinski has got 1 of his own. What a fantastic lap that was. But Chris Beats, wow. What a surprise, but a fantastic surprise for the man currently 5th place in the Drivers' Championship, despite not having had a top 5 all season long. This is on board with Elliot Budzinski. This is how he did it right at the very end. And to produce this while knowing there was somebody beating your lap time at the time under this amount of pressure right at the very end of the session, it's very, very impressive indeed.
Yeah, incredible, really, to see him being able to deliver this lap right at the end of the session, avoiding a little bit of traffic, who know where they thought they were going, but it wasn't the circuit. But up through the opening sector with this Sprint Series and the fact that the drivers were able to tweak their setups, I'm sure that Brzezinski will have changed a couple of things on the car, tinkered them around to try and keep him or keep the car as comfortable as it can be through that high-speed sector to start off the lap. Into Declan 1 and Declan 2, you just want the rear end to be settled. You don't really want it to be stepping out too far, and that's really what we're seeing for Brzezinski. So good setups clearly on the car, and that can really be reflected by the fact that we also see Nick Ledecky up near the front.
Yeah, I have a feeling the car like this was sort of a sort of wider body and a wider platform, like the Acura Corvette and the Ferrari and the McLaren. I think they respond a little bit better to this circuit than some of the others, like the Porsche, for example. But that's not taking anything away from Brzezinski in this pole lap, because after all, he did have to beat a Porsche on that pole lap through Spoon Curve. Now, this is where you need that one long arc, and look at that, he barely changes the lock. Just tightens up a little bit through the second part, because it does tighten up as you go along, just Spoon Curve. But what a fantastic line that is, and it's an important run as well for your long run down this back straight towards 130 arc, which, while it is a corner, it's pretty much flat out, and so it's important to have that run. Saw the dirt builds up on the inside line there. Now down in towards the final corner, tracing that bit of grass on the left-hand side, which does surprise you sometimes, out of the corner and towards the line and the shortest distance possible. And that lap was just about good enough for pole to steal it back away from Chris Beach. What a fantastic session that was, and a great end to the session between those two great drivers as well. I mean, we could be in for quite a race here. I just hope that it's going to be an actual battle between Beats and Brzezinski, to be honest, rather than just them just following each other.
Yeah, well, even if Beats gets overtaken off the start, it would be interesting regardless. So many drivers that are going to be battling towards the front of the field in this one, I have no doubt. Brzezinski, of course, will have the prerogative, and Beats will be there on hand to overtake, but you cannot count out anybody in that chasing pack, like of Levesque, particularly, who of course does lead the championship, Juan Lemieux as well. Of course, Kevin Denoyer, who led the championship after the opening couple of rounds, will be right in the midst as well. So it's going to be a very difficult race to navigate, but for Elliot Brzezinski, getting away in the lead is probably going to be target number one in the opening couple of laps, and then just race the rest of the 40 minutes from there and see if he can try and consolidate a win and get himself a decent haul of points tonight.
Absolutely. We shall see, as we've got just over a minute and a half to go in warm-up. Let's have a look at the starting grid for this race. As we said and saw, Elliot Brzezinski takes his first pole position of the season. And what a great lap it was from him. He's directly ahead of his Field Des Racing teammate Ledecky in third. On the other side of the grid, Chris Beats and Corin Lenaway in second and fourth. Then Guillaume Levesque and Juan Lemieux, who are sharing row 3, with Ryan Putel and Sim Otero on row 4. Kevin Simpson and Christian Steenberg round out the top 10, with Kevin Denier surprisingly outside of the top 10 alongside Emmett Lindqvist. Steve Baker is 13th ahead of Aiden Young in the WSR car, with Uthman Alawi and also Ethan Bass on row 8. Alberto Diaz and Miguel Angel Fonseca are on row 9 ahead of Alex De Almeida and Peter Nobwell. The first of the AMs is all the way down in 21st. Jermaine Warren is in that Ford Mustang, and he's ahead of Daniel Haynes. Then it's Nicholas Mazza and David Mendonca on row 12. 25th place has gone to Devon Brock with William Fenton, previous Fixed Series champion, in 26th. Blake Seaty and Matt Stadnick is the drivers sharing row 14. Jason Allen and Alex Carver round out the top 30. Kevin Kiernitz is 31st as Joshua Spears, with Noah Anderson and Sean Carmody running out in all Porsche row 17. Marshall Sker and Nicolas Lopez Gonzalez are on row 18. Mark Elliott is next ahead of Gavin Ammerman, with Gino Bella and Jaden Conwright rounding out the top 40. Conwright not qualifying, neither did Chris Stewart or Marc-Andre Desjardins, who both are outside the top 40 to begin with here. We had 42 practice for the Fixed Series race, only 40 started. Hopefully those 3 at the very back, and indeed the rest, do get onto the grid and do begin this race. Wonder how different it is going to be this second race of the evening compared to the first, since they can change the setups and all of the change that brings with it. just not sure this circuit is going to have got any easier to overtake, and that's the biggest problem they had in the first 35 minutes.
Yeah, very blustery day as well. You can see that wind nearing 25 miles an hour, quite breezy. So I wonder if that'll unsettle some other cars through some parts of the circuit. Can be open, of course, up here at Spoon, you're towards the top of the hill. And then as you get down towards turn 1, there's a lot of wind that does affect the cars going down there, quite open after you go past the the pit building. So that'll be an interesting factor, I'm sure, as well. But everybody getting themselves ready, getting themselves loaded into the grid, and then we can get ourselves rolling for the 40 minutes of this second race, and we can see whether Brzezinski can convert this win. He's got his teammate in support, of course, just in behind him, you can see on the grid. But we've got Chris Beat, not a name that we necessarily expect to be putting it up there towards the sharp end of the field. I say sharp end, towards the front row, especially after most of that qualifying session. He's there now, and what can he do from that really good position?
Yeah, it's his best, you won't be surprised to learn, best qualifying of the season so far. And he has been steadily improving. 13th place at Long Beach, 11th at Daytona, and last week he was 8th. So this is a big jump, to be fair, but he has been steadily improving and trending in the right direction. I think turn 1, though, could be very important. If he's serious about winning this race, surely he's got to be trying to get ahead of that Acura into turn 1. I just don't see how he's going to do that.
Yeah, definitely so. I'm looking forward to seeing how this race is going to pan out. Looking forward to seeing the battles that I think we're definitely going to get, particularly in that top 10. So many big names and big names for the championship, particularly involved there, and we're wanting to work their way forward. But they're just going to have to see how quickly they can do so in a very competitive field.
42, hopefully, starting at the moment. Jaden Comright and Marc-Andre Desjardins don't seem to be in the session, so we may only well get 40 as we did again in the last race, but we'll see. 40 minutes on the clock, ready to go again here at Suzuka, and look at that real slow up out of the chicane here. That could cause some problems further down the field as there's very nearly contact, and then immediately Benny Brzezinski goes after slowing down at the final corner. He goes now onto the straight, and he's got the lead with his teammate right behind. Nick Ludeke certainly knew what was going to happen there, and Brzezinski takes the lead ahead of his teammate. Chris Beats is getting shuffled out by the Acuras on the outside line, although he's done a good job round turn 1 and 2 there. He's alongside Guillaume Levesque in the blue and black Acura. Can he hold on here, Beats, through the inside at turn 3? He's not going to. Levesque is on the inside for the next corner and goes for, excuse me, that's Corbin Lenaway who goes through the next corner. Levesque is next in the queue. He's having a look too. There in the black and blue. He's going to try and get through on the inside through to Dunlop, but no, he won't manage it. Then behind him, Randemus and Simon Theriault. Further behind, Pucto, Steenberg and Dene round out the top 10, who get single file in time for the second sector.
Yeah, really good start for the Fildenez Racing team. Brzezinski and now Ledecky right at the front of the field. Led away with that great move. Levesque looking for it.
Oh!
The hill. Oh no, that's going to be a big crash. They're going to keep it out of the wall just about. Coming to that just as it was happening towards the back of the field. But right back towards the front of the field, it's still a very competitive race start. Let's see, is there any moves to be made? I think that was Ryan Puchtel, maybe even Christian Steenberg trying to find a way through, but nothing happening this time around. You've got Kevin Denoyer also in this battle, and Kevin Simpson. They're all clambering over these positions inside the top 10.
The driver that went off, by the way, was Nicholas Gonzalez or Alex Carver. I think those were the two that made contact anyway. And David Mendonca since has been off the road as well. So we'll have a look at those replays in a few moments' time. But there is changes going on up here. Steenberg has got past Pucto in towards Spoon Curve, and that's a pretty good move, to be honest. Wasn't expecting to quite see that so early on, as people go slightly wide through 130R. Later on the brakes, this is a much more close field, I've got to say, from what we had when we were in the early stages of the fixed race. And look at this for Chris Beats. That's a great run out of the final chicane. Can he maybe give this a go in towards turn 1? He's going to have a look on the inside, and he's going to find his nose alongside. He's going to be through. Great pass by Chris Beats, immediately showing them how it's done in towards turn 1.
Yeah, fantastic, effective, and he's back up into P3. Goodman Lenaway not really with much of an answer as Beats found his way to the inside line, and it shows how powerful the positioning on the circuit can be at turn number 1. Chris Beats showing that if you can get your nose to the inside and have a little bit of pace to defend from the outside line, then you can make that move work. And the 33 back up into P3 and trying to recover to where he qualified, which is, of course, P2. Still got Nick Ledecky to overtake to do that, but has a good-looking car and a good bit of pace behind him at the moment as Lenaway's under pressure from Leveski towards Degner 1.
Yeah, this is what happened to it was Gonzalez who made contact there with somebody. It wasn't Carver, excuse me, that was a separate incident. And you might be able to see it there. There's Carver on the inside line of the corner there through the Degner. This is what happened to him. It was a separate crash. It was a big concertina though. Have a look at that. Wasn't much that those guys could have done to avoid that. Meanwhile, Puctil and Denoyer going side by side at the hairpin. And Ryan Puctil's not having a very good start to this race, I'm afraid. He had a good qualifying, but all of a sudden he's getting beaten up early on here. Christian Steenberg got through earlier. Now Kevin Denoyer's got to do the same as well. He's up to 9th already and through into 9th he goes. Now Kevin Simpson will be fancying his chances as well. And once you let one through, it can start to snowball. Puctil could be in trouble here.
Yeah, Puctil is now really under pressure. Kevin System, then Emmett Lindqvist, then Aiden Young is all involved in this battle as they run their way towards 130. Are any moves to be made here for Puctil? It doesn't look, well, or for Simpson, I should say, on Puctil. Doesn't really look like it, but a wide moment for the 21. Simpson around the outside in the 606. Can he make that one work? Yes, he can. Great move from Simpson, and Puctil's got to be careful because he's losing positions like there's no tomorrow at the moment.
Oh, no!
Aiden Young through.
Lindqvist! No, Lindqvist! Oh, his rear left tyre's absolutely toast. Oh, no. That was an unfortunate bit of contact at the very wrong moment. He went straight into the wall, and I'm afraid his car is going to be really damaged after that. I'm not sure who actually delivered the final blow, but he definitely got hit. And he spun into the inside wall. Here it is again. Oh, Puctil was sliding in front of him. He slowed up to avoid it, and he must have got hit in the rear there.
Let's see it again. Was it a checkup? Was it a checkup from Puctil, which put Lindqvist in a difficult position? Yeah, it was. Bit of a checkup from him. Lindqvist had to almost slow down, and then Lindqvist got hit in the rear. So almost the innocent passenger and all that was Emmett Lindqvist. And he finds himself at the end of the pit wall, and that's it's really tough luck for him. And he was in such a great position to look like he was going to try and move forward, but as it is, he's pretty much out of the race, out of contention at least.
That's a big shame for Emmett Lindqvist. Big shame after a good start. Unfortunately, he didn't start last week, so his drop round is going to be used for that. And, well, this round is not going to be particularly better for him, I'm afraid. As Steenberg and Denoyer, the two PGZ McLarens, get together here in 8th and 9th position. Denoyer is currently the leading of the two in the championship in 4th, but Steenberg is 11th, and he's only missed one round so far, which is kind of why he's had 2 top 5 finishes other than that. So he's had a decent start to the season, all things considered. So these two now look to home in on the group, currently being headed by Corbin Lenaway. Lenaway got past Beats at the start of this race, but ever since then been slipping and sliding a little bit, and he's now into the clutches of the championship leader, Guillaume Levesque.
Yeah, and Levesque is very much a dangerous customer. You don't really want to be giving him too much wiggle room and too much room to try and attack you. So definitely cause for concern for Corbin Lenaway for the time being, but Levesque staying where he is for the moment. Terrio also looking for a move on one of the move. They work their way through the opening couple of corners, but it seems that there's a few drivers who are content to stay generally where they are for the time being, not force the issue too much in these still early stages. We've gone past the opening couple of laps where the frantic action occurs, and I think that some of them are just happier to sit and wait for a little while, get themselves into a rhythm before making moves further up the field. Also, of course, difficult to make moves here, so they aren't going to force the issue too much.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know about you, I've been very pleasantly surprised by the moves that we've seen so far. Last race, there were very few to pick from outside of lap 1, and even on lap 1, to be honest, but so far I've been pleasantly surprised by this race.
Yeah, the opening couple of laps, drivers were really aggressive in making moves, and effectively so. It's going to be interesting to see whether that continues, whether it does calm down a touch, but it definitely does give us room to maybe expect some good moves or some good battling towards right at the end of the race. Potentially for the lead, potentially at least for the top 5. That'll be a great way to end out the evening.
And here is some of it as well further down. Ethan Bass versus Steve Baker, with Alberto Diaz just in behind in the Acura, or another one of the Acuras I should say. He has a look at the inside, but no move made there into Spoon Curve. Oh, he gets very close there to Steve Baker, and now Diaz is going to be really homing in onto the back of them here. He's going to be getting the double slipstream, and it's a mighty slipstream that's kicked up by this Ford Mustang, punching a huge hole into the air. Ready for these Acuras to just sweep up in towards the chicane, though. They'll be nowhere near close enough to make a move this time around, but they might do on each other. Diaz has a look on Baker, can't do it. Terrio and Steenberg meanwhile. Oh, Terrio's made a mistake here, and the teammates are going to freight train him on the inside line by the looks of it. Terrio was on the back end of a train there, headed in 4th place, but he's suddenly going to be right to the back of it. There he goes. Steenberg and Terrio go through on the inside line. Terrio's not giving up yet, though. On the outside line, he's done well there through turn 1 and 2. Terrio is in trouble here. He's going to be on the outside for turn 3, and he might not get the place after all. He's going to have to back out of it. The teammates are going to be split apart, and Denier would have seen that as his chance to go through.
Yeah, fantastic defending from Terrio to go right around the outside, keep his foot in, and just make sure that Denier didn't really know when he was able to pin the throttle on the exit of the corner, make sure that Terrio was firmly there and was able to almost dictate when he could accelerate a little bit more, and done an incredible job in doing so. It means that he keeps the position up into P8, well, still in P8 I should say, not allowing Denier to get up into P8, and Terrio will, albeit lose a little bit of time to Steenberg, but stay where he is for the time being. And that could be crucial. Good to see moves being made, though, in the opening stages of this race, as we've been mentioning, really. But also great to see that kind of defence, because, you know, often when you get to the inside at turn 1, that could be moved on, but Terrio showing that you can stick it around the outside and defend.
And of all the cars that I would have thought you'd be able to do that in as well, I didn't think the Porsche was going to be one of them, that's for sure. So Terrier's done a very good job there to hang on. Not maybe had the best start to the season that he was hoping for. I know he had a difficult run at Long Beach, which is really holding him back in this season. But he is a quality driver, as we saw from last season. So maybe we'd expect to see him higher up than 7th so far in this championship standing. But he's still got the racecraft, that's for sure. As Denier goes slightly wide in the background. Now, can he get a run out of the final chicane? That's where you really need the run hit in this McLaren if you want to try and go through. I'm not sure he's going to manage it, though. The problem is that his teammate's giving slipstream to the Porsche now, which is not going to help. And Denier could well be stuck now for the last couple of laps. That's how important that pass was there. Denier is now spending laps and laps behind Terrio, where he would have been looking forwards now in 8th place if he'd have made the move successfully.
Yeah, and that's the real trade-off that is going to be faced really at this stage now. And Denier is going to be almost increasingly frustrated seeing the back of Terrio, feeling like he had the move done a lap ago, but it not working out in the end, and Terrio proving to be very much a force to be reckoned with. As he showed last season with his teammate Vincent Trepanier. Of course, Trepanier ended up winning the Drivers' Championship, but between the two of them they won the team's title. Terrio not quite with the support that he had then, but he's still showing how much pace he's got now, and how much of a dangerous customer he can be. So good to see that he's sticking it up there, and even with drivers that would consider themselves title contenders, as the number 5 is, it proving difficult to get through, and Terrio showing his class.
Haven't spoken about the AMs very much so far today, but leading the AM field at the moment is still Jermaine Warren in the green and black Ford Mustang. He's on the road ahead of Nicholas Mazza and Daniel Haynes and William Fenton, but they're all pros. Blake Ziti is second in the AMs at the moment. You can see 1, 2, and then there's another before Ziti. There you see in the background Ziti in the Porsche, and then it's Marshall Scare who's third. He's down in 29th though. That's quite a long way back. There's Ziti in the Porsche, the first of those two in the same livery. Just behind him is Matt Stednick, who is in a different class despite the similar look to the two of them. Now somebody's got off here, and it's Baker. It's Steve Baker in the Solpec Acura who's gone off, and it looks like a very big accident, I'm afraid, at 130R. To be honest with you, I'm surprised we've not seen more of them here tonight at that corner. It's so difficult, and you have very big accidents when you do go off. and he was just sliding from the early point. Oh, that's a big head-on crash with the wall there for Baker. He tried to correct the slide. He just couldn't do anything about it, though. Overcorrected, went head first into the wall.
And you're going to need a miracle to survive the car through that massive hit for Steve Baker, and he'll be back in pit lane and completely, realistically out of the race. He may be able to get back in, back involved, but I cannot imagine it's going to be a very quick pit stop, and he'll be over a lap down regardless. So not good at all for Steve Baker. Let's see if he can try and recover in the coming weeks. Of course, we've got Zandvoort next week, Road America. Road Atlanta the week after that, so it's still more tricky circuits, but we'll see if Baker can try and uptick his form. Interesting as well to see a couple of the drivers moving around towards the back end of the top 10. Aiden Young, who's been there or thereabouts in 12th, not really able to move up through the field in a way that we saw last week at Jerez, coming right the way through the field to nearly a top 5, I believe. So, and we'll have to see if we can keep tabs on where he is at throughout this race. But he's got the likes of Uthman Alawi, who is doing quite well in the championship, just behind, and Ethan Bass as well in 13th and 14th. So an interesting part of the grid, but with the varying results that we've seen in the opening 3 rounds, there's lots of drivers that have had some good results so far this season. So a lot of drivers that I feel like they're more than good enough to get themselves involved at the front of the field.
I must say this is weird, but this is a weird sound for a Corvette to make, isn't it? But we are, believe it or not, riding on board with one. Aiden Young in the WSR liveried machine. He was the one who got into the back of Emmett Lindqvist, unfortunately, before the pit wall. And you can see Puktel also was hit by Lindqvist there. You can see a bit of a dent in the rear end of the SimCity Racing Porsche. Young, though, looking for his way through on the way towards turn 1 and hasn't been able to do it. But what that crash actually for Lindqvist has done, rather weirdly, is sort of taken the attention off of Ryan Puktel, and all of a sudden he's stopped losing quite so many places. He's actually not lost a place since that crash, whereas the overtakes were really starting to snowball for him just before that.
Yeah, stopping the rot with, with a little bit of... again, it was all created by the little mistake that Puktel had out of the final corner, which checked up Lindqvist, which is what meant that he was driven into the back of. So, interesting to really see how that's worked out for him. Aiden Young, though, is not a driver you really want to be seeing in your rearview mirrors. 22 GT4 wins in the PRL, one off all-time record. No wins in the GT3s, however, as he is down at P12 for the time being, so unlikely to get his first tonight, but very tricky customer, very fast driver, and on his day can really beat anybody. Trying to get to the mirrors again of Puktel into the hairpin, not going to make a move there, but you can clearly see that Young's got a little bit more pace than the 21 for the time being. He just has to try and find a way to be able to get past and use it.
Somebody asking in YouTube what the purple numbers mean as opposed to the blue. The purple numbers denote the AM class, which there are not very many of in the Sprint Series, and the blue numbers are all pros. The purple ribbon is the fastest lap, to try and avoid any confusion. We were just on board with the race leader, Jermaine Warren, earlier. This is Blake Ziti, who's trying to chase him down. You can see the purple on your screen there. That is because he is an AM. And here's the problem when you're in an AM as well. We talk about it positively for the pros in terms of passing AMs does give you points, and that's great for them, but actually frustrating for the AMs and frustrating for Blake Ziti is that he's got Fenton, Haynes and Mazza all in his way before he can even get to the leader of his class.
Absolutely. I mean, difficult really at this stage of the race to not be trying to move forward and, well, trying to stay particularly in the lead of some of the AM classes, and of course at the front of the field with Kosinski and Ledecky. Also going to be thinking about pit stops coming up in the near future. Only a few laps away, I think we are, from most of the drivers coming down pit road. Of course, half distance is that 20-minute mark, which we'll hit in 2 laps time. I expect we'll probably go another couple of laps past that, so maybe 4 more laps before we see the majority of drivers come down pit lane. That's just a bit of a guess, but we'll see if that holds up or whether they have to come down slightly earlier in this race.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We can't be that far away. Aiden Young had a half look there down the inside of Ryan Puktel into Dunlop. Couldn't do it. Uthman Alawi and Ethan Bass close in behind. It's 4 different manufacturers, by the way, involved in this battle for 11th place. They're very well matched around this circuit, although it is Acura 1-2 at the moment. I haven't seen much about it, Brzezinski or Nick Ledecky, but that's because they've been running away at the front of the field I get the feeling Chris Beats maybe qualified a bit higher than what he is going to race, and that was always going to happen. But these Fieldiness Racing Acuras look absolutely planted to the ground and pretty untouchable so far.
Yeah, it looks impressive, really, doesn't it, with these two out in front. And we've seen time and time again in this series how not important or useful really it can be to have two teammates at the front of the field for each other, just working off each other, able to almost protect each other, give each other some markers on how much pace that they've got in the tank. It is a real benefit, and to have Brzezinski and Ledecky for each other up at the front of the field, I think it's going to help them extend that lead further than they otherwise could have done. So definitely good signs for Fieldiness Racing. I'm sure the entire team will be delighted about how it's going so far, but they're still going to bring it home in the final 20 minutes of this race, and that's going to be no mean feat. They have to keep the lap times solid all the way to the end. They've got Chris Beats to worry about, of course. He's only a couple of seconds off the back, but for the time being, the likes of Lenaway and Levesque almost caught up in a battle themselves. I think they'll feel pretty comfortable up in the top two positions.
So absolutely, in terms of what this would do to the championship and points-wise, Levesque would head slightly further ahead of Lemurs, but Brzezinski would drag himself back into the fight a little bit more. Nick Ledecky is quite far down in 10th at the moment, and he's had two fairly poor rounds at Daytona and Jerez, so could be difficult for him to get involved this season. But Brzezinski started the day only 17 points behind, and he'd be gaining, I think, at least half of that back at the moment with this result. But we are still early on in the season, still 5 rounds to go after this one, and another couple of rounds where a chance of rain is on the cards. There is none here, but we saw some rain at the end of last week's race, and it was very exciting, I've got to say. We've got some rain, unlikely, but could happen at Donington Park, and same goes for the Hockenheimring in the final race of the season. I mean, if last week's anything to go by, having a final race of the season with some late rain could be very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, last week when we saw that rain come in late in the race, drivers having to almost double guess what tyres to go on to, having to then adapt to the conditions, it was such a great way to end the race. Hopefully we get a little bit more of that towards the end of the season, but even if we don't, it's going to be such a turning point in that Jerez race to really see how the championship changes. What a move that could be for Levesque. Up and under on Lenaway, did him the dummy, fantastically done by the championship leader in the 991, up into P4. Corbin Lenaway has to settle for P5. Levesque just set him up absolutely beautifully and went past him as if he was standing still there.
That's a great job from Levesque, and Lenaway flashing his lights at him as if to say, get in line, let's work together a little bit here. But Lenaway's only been going backwards ever since he overtook Chris Beats for 3rd place on the opening lap. He's only lost position since then. Levesque now through, and that was a pretty impressive move on that occasion, but it doesn't make it any better for Corbin Lenaway, who's now got Juan Lemurs behind. And not only is Lewis going to be wanting to go through because of his own position, but actually because he's seen his main championship rival just get ahead of him, and so surely he's going to want to follow through into the top 5.
You'd think so, and I think Lemur is going to be all over the back of Corbin Lenaway very quickly. Christian Steenberg, you can't count him out as well. He is towards the back of this battle. Of course, he's ahead of Theriault after Denoyer couldn't get through himself. But this is going to be an interesting little gaggle of cars for the top 4 positions. Levesque not able to get away though too far, and Lenaway is sticking right with Guillaume for the time being, and it's going to mean that Levesque isn't necessarily safe in that P4 for the foreseeable future.
Well, this is quite a big gap now from this battle for 4th place to the rest further out front. It looks like the podium places might well be set. That's quite early to say that, with still nearly half the race left, but certainly feels like that at the moment. So these guys make their way through Spoon Curve, now onto the back straight and towards 130 yard. Behind Lemurs, by the way, Christian Steenberg is really closed in the last few moments. Simon Theriault next, then Kevin Denoyer, who will still be thinking about that moment, I suspect, where he could have got through on Theriault and avoided all this, but there you go, he's still there at the moment. And Lenaway gets pretty close into the final chicane. He really did close in there, but couldn't go through on Levesque. Now he'll have the run on the exit, or at least he'll try and get one, but no. And with 18 minutes to go, he's still stuck behind. Suspect 9 laps remaining here, and surely pit stops to come very soon.
Yeah, we can't be far away from those pit stops. with more than half of the race gone. I mean, nobody has blinked really just yet in terms of going into the pit lane. So I think we are going to be waiting for maybe the next lap or two. How late they can run it into the race could be crucial. See some frantic action across the start-finish line. This is right towards the back end of the top 20. William Henson will have the inside line. Can he hold it there? Yes, he will. And he will... Oh, well, maybe he was on the outside line. Difficult to really judge. But Fenton, in that black and red car, will not be able to make the move around the outside at turn 1 and 2 and will stay where he is. But this gaggle of cars is pretty closely packed. Daniel Haynes and Nicholas Mazza leading it. They've got about 5 seconds up to who I believe is the race leader. Indeed it is.
Yeah, and this is disastrous for Blake Ziti, by the way, because of this battle that you just saw. Absolutely disastrous. Ledaway gets quite close again towards the hairpin, but couldn't quite do it on the Corvette. Yeah, Mazza at the head of the group, ahead of Haynes Fenton. Stanowic's now ahead of Ziti, but the gap from Ziti to Warren is way bigger than it was. And I'm not sure it was ever going to come down anyway, but even so, Ziti basically being prevented from even having a go at the race win at the moment by all the pros around him. But this is the racing. It's effectively one big class with a little subclass in between as we have a look at, not David Mendonca's first incident of the race, but that is by far the biggest. He was very nearly hit by one of the McLarens as well. Thankfully that wasn't in front of the big group.
Yeah, Mendonca will be pretty much out of contention. Not good for him, but lucky that we didn't have a bigger crash. We kind of got away with some tonight. Not for the first time we've seen there, with more drivers almost avoiding the collision, which could have been a lot worse than it ended up being. 16 minutes left in this race. Still no movement for drivers towards the pit lane as the top 3 all go through. And we're still waiting. I mean, there's only going to be about, what, another 8 laps left in this race? I think we might get it. Well, no, we will get we might get a 9, depending no, I think it'll just be the 8 with the pit stop time that we will have to have. But that means that there's only going to be another, few opportunities for drivers to come down pit lane. It's going to get very busy very quickly.
And there's an example. That was Jason Allen making his way in as this battle continues here, just in the outside of the top 20. Side by side between a couple of SimCity Racing drivers by the looks of things there. That was Mazza getting overtaken by Noah Anderson, and Mazza is losing loads of places suddenly. Blake Ziti goes through at him as well in the green and black. So he's up to 23rd again, but this group is now all over the place. For whatever reason, Mazza was at the very end. Just seemed to just decide to drop to the very back, and I can't quite see a reason why.
Look at I. I'm sure he will know, but it's not necessarily, not necessarily very much aware, or very much easy to understand why just yet. Only 50 minutes left to go. The sun is setting here for the race, fittingly so, as we get further into the evening. I did want to mention the fact that the gap between Brzezinski and Ledecky has increased. It was about 0.7, 0.7 of a second. It's now up to 1.7 seconds. Ledecky isn't falling back into Chris Beats. There's no worry there, but Brzezinski just pulling away from his teammate a touch and not really waiting around for him. So I wonder if he's just trying to put his foot down now, realises that they've got themselves into a position with only so much time left on the clock, and he just wants to consolidate his race win for himself.
Second podium of the season it would be, and his second win in a row as well, after surviving the late downpour at Jerez to win there as well. As with 14 minutes to go, Christian Steenberg is in. So pit stops are very much among us now, as Mazza is now passed by Marshall Scare. Oh, he's gone! Big spin from Mazza through 130R, and he's just grazed the wall. Well, he's not been having a good lap. Can't really work out why, but he'll certainly be in the pit lane now. It could have been a lot worse, let's put it that way, for him round that corner there. He gets away with just grazing the wall.
It could have been a lot worse there for Nicholas Mazza again. And we're seeing something that could have been worse than it ended up being. So getting away with one once again. Still 13 minutes left of this race though. Hopefully we can avoid a big collision in that time, but you never do know. Still pit stops in the offing. We've gone this long here and we haven't seen anybody from the front train really coming for pit stops. It's going to be a window of about 1 or 2 laps, it feels like.
Yeah, well, Steenberg's been in, but other than that, we haven't seen anybody really from the leaders in. It's it's, I guess, not a surprise really when you think about where they would come out and who they'd be behind. It could be even more difficult than the trains they're currently stuck in, and that is the problem around this circuit. Even if you are a significant deal faster than whoever you're behind, it could still be an issue trying to overtake them. It's just very, very difficult around this circuit. That much has been proven for us tonight, as if we didn't know already. 12 and a half minutes to go. And Ethan Bass is doing his best to get past Uthman Aloui, but he's found this pretty difficult over the last few laps, and there's no reason to suggest why it's going to get any easier. Quite close before 130R, but this doesn't really lend itself to overtaking. It's the braking zone afterwards you're really looking for, as Aiden Young is there just up ahead. Bass couldn't quite use it. Young did though. He got alongside Pucto, who might be in the pit lane anyway here. No, he's just been overtaken. So Bass comes in. Now the pit stops are really starting to begin, but Aiden Young has finally made his way through. Would have been wishing he'd done that about 10-15 minutes ago really, when he could have done, but now he is finally through and he's into clean air as half of those ahead of him come into pit lane.
That should be the move into 11th for Aiden Young once all the pit stops shake themselves out, but now it is the case of can he pull away from Ryan Puctal and try and get after a couple of the drivers like Denoye, maybe a couple of the others that have come into the pit lane so far. This is going to be a really key couple of laps for him. I expect we'll see these guys down pit road next lap. Again, we've got the likes of Chris Beats coming out of the pit lane down in P13 and just behind Daniel Haynes and William Benson, so they've got some fighting to do to work their way through the field, but there really should only be another 6 laps, including this one, to go in this race. So definitely time to get a bit of a move on if you are Aiden Young, and it looks like he's doing that though, because that gap already up to nearly a second to Ryan Puctal.
Yeah, so yeah, a clear showing that he's been quicker all along and just not been able to make the move in the way that he would have hoped. So Ludecky was the first of those to come in as far as when you follow down the order. He's now 10th in clean air. Chris Beats was next, but he's now out behind Daniel Haynes, and that's not particularly ideal. Then we've got Christian Stimberg, who's been out on his own for a little while now. That's a good strategy from him. Then you've got Simon Terrio, he's also in clean air. Ethan Bass, Kevin Simpson, Obardo Diaz are all stuck in traffic though in a queue behind Alex Carver, which is not particularly ideal. Here's Chris Beats, and this is not particularly ideal either. This is why they didn't stop 10 minutes ago, because this could have gone on for a good 5 laps.
Yeah, and Daniel Haynes is going to be coming under increasing pressure. If he doesn't come into the pits this lap, then I think Chris Beats will be looking for a move down into turn 1 if he doesn't get it done here at the Casio Triangle. Through 130R, Roy Owen looks pretty stable for the number 33, not able to make a send though to the inside, and he's almost going to have to be hoping that Daniel Haynes comes into the pit lane this time and gives him a little bit of an easier run. Oh my word! The 30 does come in, and the 33 nearly runs into the back of him. Just about avoids though, and will go down. The start-finish rate should re-inherit that P3. There is Guillaume Levesque coming out of the pit lane, but Levesque may have jumped him. He has.
Levesque has got him, partly because his pit stop was 1.1 seconds shorter, but I would suspect that part of that time loss came on the outlap as well there for Chris Beats. He's had a bit of a disaster of a pit stop cycle. Guillaume Levesque is onto the podium suddenly, ahead of Chris Beats. Then it's Swan Lemus, and Corbin Lenaway is now outside the top 5, by the way. Christian Steenberg's up to 7th, then Denoye. Then it's Simon Terrio. Aiden Young's up to the top 10. Who's missed out here? I'm not entirely sure, but I reckon somebody's dropped way through the field. This is that group I was talking about. Such a close battle here in the lower parts of the top 10. Aloui is so close behind Kevin Simpson on the way towards the Degners. It's a mix of people getting up to speed after their stops and people already up to speed, which is, well, it's causing a few people to trip over others at the moment.
Not the easiest blend to really judge either, so the driver's having to try and judge it in the moment, but I think after just about half a lap or so, we are seeing most of the drivers get themselves up to speed. Alawi right behind Simpson, behind Puctal. Puctal, the driver now down to P12. Ethan Bass up into P11 after his pit stop strategy. He'll be happy about that in the 52. But for Aiden Young, up into the top 10, trying to gain after Terrio, it's going to be unlikely to gain another position from there. But we should have 4 more laps to run here. It's touch and go whether we get a 5th, you know. But I think we may even get a 5th, you know. It's very close. I think our time page lists us having 21 laps, but it's only going to come down to a couple of seconds.
Into the final chicane they come. This is quite a lively group as well that's popped up. So, some of these have really gotten closed up after the pit stop cycles. As Denny now is finally ahead of Terrio through the pit stop cycle, so he'll be pleased about that, but he'll again be wondering where he could be in the field now if he'd have done this 20 minutes or so ago. Lewis is going to have a big job defending here, and if he wants to keep in touch with Guillaume Levesque in the championship, you get the feeling that he's got to hold on to a top 5 here as well, because as it stands, he's already losing points. It's just a case of how many. He needs to keep the Acura behind him.
You can't really afford to let him through, but at this stage of the race, you're going to be driving on your mirrors rather than driving on your windscreen, and that can, you know, create some issues if drivers aren't really focusing on the road in front of them. A couple more mistakes creep in, and then all of a sudden, they're spending even more time looking in the rearview mirror. So, really difficult balance to follow. But Lenoe will be applying all the pressure that he can. Steenberg here as well, will be in the battle. I think for Denoyer. Maybe an extra position or two, of course, getting through on Stereo in the pit stop window. But it's difficult to really judge. It's great that we have these type battles, though, in the closing stages, because it means that we're being kept guessing on which way this is going to go.
Yeah, so it's true. It's only 1.1 seconds between Budzinski and Ludecki. I suspect that will stay the same, but this group very much may not. We are very close, by the way, as to whether we're going to get 3 or 4 more laps in this race. Not entirely sure which it's going to be right now, to be honest with you. It's going to be very close at the moment. Let's see. I think it may only be 3, though. As Denny, they went very wide. They've got the line down there that if you go sort of half over the curb on the outside, you will spin. But if you either go fully over it or not at all, then you'll survive. And so that's why you'd see some quite wide lines being taken sometimes, but look at some of the gaps opening up here. Steenberg and Denier are nowhere near these two right now, and I'm not sure that's entirely down to Lemmer's speed. I think that was a mistake from Denier. Look how close Terrio suddenly gets in towards turn number 1, but I can't imagine it's going to be very easy for the driver of that Porsche to actually get back at Denier, who jumped him in the pit lane. This race again, especially with the second half of this one, has shown us again just how difficult it is to overtake.
And Denoyer only really being able to do it thanks to the pit stop window. Difficult to do it before that. I think Aiden Young as well, a driver that we really often see working his way through the field, was stuck for so long behind Ryan Puchtel as he goes through. There is Aiden Young. The amount of times I've commentated on Aiden Young in the PRL, and that's the first time I've seen his driver cam. Which is nice to see, as he's dialed in another dark room. I know we talked about this quite a lot, but dark rooms versus light rooms, it's you know, you'd have to get your goggles out in that room, that's for sure.
Well, I would. It's, that's uncomfortable. I've got to say, I've always said it, but yeah, it's not my cup of tea. Anyway, maybe he's adjusted it to the conditions because the sun is going down in these final moments. See the sky with a very nice haze to it. I'm not sure if Japan looks like this at this time of year. England certainly doesn't. Don't get something like this in January, but maybe they do over there. I don't know. But it certainly looks very nice, and these conditions are not quite getting too dark for us to quite see as it did in the Fixed Series if you were with us earlier on. It was very, very dark indeed throughout that one. As we look a bit further back here to the battles going on for 10th place, pretty much headed by Aiden Young, although a bit hard to put it all on him. Puchtel again, who's at the front of this mini group. Simpson, Alouin, Diaz right behind. Look how close Urbano Diaz is out the final corner here, but his actual exit wasn't very good. Well, he started quite close, he's ended the straight quite far away, and so again they struggle to pass it towards turn 1.
But again, Puchtel having to defend. It's just been endless defending for the 21 in this race. He started right towards the front and fell through the field in the opening few minutes, then kind of stayed pretty stagnant just outside the top 10, but now dropping down again. Simpson, Alawi, Diaz all looking to try and come through as well. It's just not been a very comfortable evening for Ryan Bookdill. He'll be very happy to see the checkered flag fly and end the pain that he's faced. Very good car for qualifying. Maybe not quite setting up the car too well for the higher fuel loads in the race, but he's only got another couple of laps to try and survive this now. I do think we are only going to get 2 more laps after this one. I don't think we're going to get an extra. Oh, sorry, we're going to get 1 more lap after this. We're not going to get the extra one.
I think so, but we never know. Pucto defends in towards the hairpin, and Simpson is going to try and get the exit, I suppose. I'm not sure he was even really going to go for the move at the hairpin, but Pucto made absolutely sure of it, and he's continuing on to try and defend here from these drivers who are stacking up behind him and keep passing him in the most part. It's been a difficult race for him, but he's looking to at least hang on to what he's got now after the pit stops. Out of Spoon Curve, and Simpson close again, but 130R really prevents you from getting side by side before then, and then you haven't got a very long run between there and the next braking zone, so it can be very difficult. What about this time round though, because it is later on in the race? Simpson might give it a go. He's on the outside line. He's going to brake relatively early there as long as he's making the move, but he might want to try and hang it around the outside anyway. He's on the inside for the second part. Oh, this is going to be a great chance for the others. They make side-to-side contact, Simpson and Pucto, and here goes Eloy on the middle, outside, inside. Where does he go here? He's going to be surely stuck on the outside. Oh, he's going to do it as going on the defensive goes Simpson there. The white flag waves. 1 more lap for these guys. Oh, Pucto loses 2 places in 1. His front bumper's off. Upman Alloy's lost his front end, but he's going to continue on. The Ferrari looks otherwise done damage. He's got its front end in back again. I think Alloy's okay, and he's going to hang on to 13th.
Yeah, and Puctil still defending because you've got Diaz and Alex de Almeida now right up behind him as he tries to hold on to the top 16, even the top 15 to hold on to. But these guys will work their way up the hill and through Dunlop Curve with now Kevin Simpson leading the train. No more moves, I think, to be made for Kevin Simpson unless there's an absolute disaster up in front, because they are now on their final lap off the race. Puctil down to P14, but what a move that was. Nearly for Alawi as well to try and make his way past both of those guys on the run across the start-finish line and down towards turn number 1, but not to be in the end. We'll have to see if the 444 will gain another position on Kevin Simpson in the final couple of corners, but it really is now or never for all of these guys.
Certainly is. It's the last lap of the race and the last chance as well. Pucto will be disappointed to have missed out right at the very end here, hanging on to those positions, but he's done a valid effort of defending, that for sure. Final seconds of the race then. Eli Pazinski will be making his way into the final corners now, and in actually a closer race than last week. He's going to hang on from Nick Ludecki. He survived the late downpour at Jerez to take the win there 7 days ago, but he's survived a late onslaught from his teammate to win this time round, who slowed down for the photo finish. Fildenez Racing take a 1-2 at Suzuka. It's Eli Pazinski who wins ahead of Nick Ludecki. What a fantastic result that is for the team, as Pazinski walked himself right into championship contention with that. Into the final chicane. These guys will stay single file. Simpson will beat Alloy ahead of Pucto, Diaz, de Almeida, who round out that group. In an exciting finish for those guys, but further behind in the AM class, Jermaine Warren is going to win in the Mustang. He takes the AM victory here at Suzuka.
A great drive from Jermaine Warren, somewhat going under the radar in that race, but winning comfortably in the AM class. I think he was about 5 or 6 spots ahead of anybody else in the field, so really good for Jermaine Warren. And after a couple of all right opening rounds and not being here last week, really is great to see him get himself to the victory lane in terms of the AM class. He may bump himself up a position or 2 in the standings as well, so good for him, and a very decent drive in a very difficult mid-pack in this field.
Absolutely. There's a lot of battling going on there, but he survived it and didn't get caught up in quite the battles that Blake Ziti did, which really held him back throughout this race. And he was able to survive for the win. Eli Pazinski wins in the pros and overall ahead of Nick Ludecki. Championship leader Guillaume Levesque rescuing a podium with some overtakes there in that race. Chris Beats converts the front row to a 4th place finish, respectable. And Juan Lemus finishes 5th. Corbin Lenaway finishes 6th for the 2 PGZ McLarens, with Simon Terrio and Aidan Young rounding out the top 10. Ethan Bass was the first of the Mustangs in 11th, with Kevin Simpson next, who beat Uthman Alawi and Ryan Pucto in that group we were following towards the end. Obado Diaz and Alex de Almeida and Miguel Angel Fonseca were all involved in it as well. Peter Nobel was 18th, and Jermaine Warren, who won in the AMS, and of William Fenton, who rounds out the top 20. Daniel Haynes then 21st, and Joshua Spears with Noah Anderson put SimCity Racing next. In fact, Jason Hall also SimCity Racing was at 24th place. Kevin Kiernetz finishes second in the AMS ahead of Nicolas Lopez Gonzalez, who recovered from going off on lap 1 to finish 26th, ahead of Alex Carver, who finishes 27th. Devon Brock makes up the last podium place on the AMS ahead of Mark Elliott and Dino Vella. 31st was Matt Stanwyck with Marshall Skett and Sean Carmody on the lead lap. Blake Zitty was 1 lap down in the end, despite running second in the AMS for quite a while. Gavin Ammerman ends up 2 laps down and classified, with Nicholas Mazza 36th ahead of David Mendonca. Steve Baker, Chris Stewart, Emmett Lindqvist all retired fairly early on with crash damage. Well, that is it for the Sprint Series race here at Suzuka. It doesn't actually seem that any of the drivers are waiting for us just for the moment, so we'll hang up for a moment, Darren. But that was a display, I think, of just what this circuit is like. It's really, really difficult at times to make past, especially in GT3s. I find that balance of performance so close, cars so well matched, drivers know what they're doing, and it does make it hard to overtake.
And drivers well matched as well. We saw that in qualifying, didn't we? With the gaps generally being next to nothing. I mean, so many of those cars towards the front of the field by hundreds and thousands in qualifying, which was always good to see. And it's always really impressive to see so many drivers able to show how good they can be in some of these races. Race pace, of course, isn't the same as qualifying pace, and Brzezinski showed that he had both in abundance. Ledecky as well, able to keep up with him in the closing stages. And for Phil Dinez Racing, I think I've seen Philippe Dinez in the chat. Very happy with the 1-2, and I'm sure the team is going to be delighted.
Yep, Phil Dinez very pleased indeed, as he would be. Well, I've never seen this before, but nobody's come to have a chat with us. So that will be just about it for us here tonight. Make sure you come and join us again next week from Zandvoort. We'll be live from a bit earlier than that, actually, about 8:30 Eastern Time. But nevertheless, make sure you come join us for the Fixed and Sprint Series racing with the GT3s in 7 days' time. But for tonight, it's Phil Dinez Racing's night. Elliot Brzezinski and Nick Ledecky, 1 and 2 over the line here at Suzuka with a dominant performance in the GT3 Sprint Series. Big thanks to everyone who's tuned in over the course of the evening tonight. Up in New and Illyria alongside Darren Thacker with Hugo Louise behind the cameras. We'll see you in 1 week's time at Zandvoort. For now, it's goodbye.